Anyway, Zelensky, Netanyahu in D.C., Francesca Hong surges in the polls. Strait still closed. Situation monitor. Iran strikes first. Trita Parsi on later. Norm Finkelstein tomorrow. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I've been teasing a very, 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 very special guest for the entire week. And it's here. It's happening tomorrow. His name is Norm Finkelstein. And I am going to have the honor of hosting him in my home, in person, in Los Angeles. That's right. We're finally doing it. We're finally doing it. It's finally happening. I know many of you have long awaited this moment. You found him like they did the former leader of Hamas. You don't think the WNL community watched Finkelstein? No, look, the WNL community broadly is like pro-Palestine. They don't like Trump that much. Some of them may still harbor some kind of like sympathetic feeling towards Trump because they'll say stuff like, oh, he has aura or whatever. But most of them don't like Trump. Most of them don't fuck with ICE. So I don't really care if they don't fuck with me. I don't, who gives a fuck? Whatever. They will eventually grow out of it. And they will get to a point where they are more invested in politics. It's just not going to happen in the interim. It's not going to happen in the short term, but I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried about where they're at. Because did you see you're in a movie? Yeah, American Doctor. I know. New Abdul poll is dropped post Whitaker endorsement and not an internal. Yeah, I know. We're gonna do all of that. Many of the WNL community fandom can't vote yet because they're too young, and the ones who can vote, I don't think care to. So, but overall, their politics are probably all over the place. Most people's politics are all over the place. They eventually will grow out of that phase of being like, oh, I don't really care about politics. Like, who gives a shit? Some of them will probably become reactionary. Some of them will become right-wing, and they'll say, oh, taxes are fucking terrible. Why am I getting taxed? They'll slot themselves into, the expected American political tendencies, the median voter. If they become voters at all. Can't believe you can't be talking about this with that image. Charlie Kirk porno. You can't be talking about this with that image. Wait, what's wrong with this image? What? That's the newest conservative commentator who's trying to goon bait and Cooter Max, Coochie Max, Cooter Max, whatever it's called. This was peak himbo and coworker era.
Hunter, also the most famous belt in the world. I'd like to use a lifeline. Can I call up Hassan? Hassan, come up here! Where you at? Let me see him! Get up here! Get the fuck up here, baby! What do you think the answer is? You don't fucking know? Everyone's gonna think you're stupid. Yep.
The mythical Greek hunter and also the most famous belt in the world.
What'd he say?
Orion?
I would go with that answer. Can I drop this? I'm gonna send it. Mike, drop that bitch. The mythical.
Damn, this shit is sad. Not gonna lie. What the fuck went wrong? Politics, baby. Money, politics, more like politricks. Mass harassment campaigns that sought to isolate me from the rest of the community by consistently harassing people and punishing them for daring to collaborate with me in any capacity. Ludwig still to this day gets inundated with a barrage of attacks from some of the sweatiest fucking losers on the internet who literally claim that he's my dog. Like I dog walk him. Like he has no opinions of his own. Cause like there is a endless appetite to brigade by right-wing groups that can masquerade as like apolitical on the internet, that mask their politics, and there's a lot of success. We've talked about this before. There's been a tremendous amount of success in the apolitical commentary sphere of the idea that like I am peak woke, I'm wrong, I'm everything that's wrong with woke, and I'm just like a fucking huge villain, and anyone that doesn't immediately criticize me all day every day in the same exact fucking ways that these like psychopaths obsess over are obviously in the pocket and are being blackmailed by me and shit like that. All this stuff obviously accelerated post October 7. It got far worse after October 7. There's a decent chunk of the NMP community that thinks you're grooming Nick to regurgitate your talking points. Yes. Okay. One of the things that you guys have to understand because a lot of people complain in here, they're like, why do you always do politics? That's why, bro. That's why. It's like, well, part of it is because there's a lot of important shit going on in the world. Okay. So I have to do more politics than ever before. That's number one. But the other reason why I don't do as many collabs is because I just don't want to fucking bring that level of like animosity towards other random people. You know? That's it. Everyone in this industry knows I have the most vicious fucking psychopathic stalkers. Everyone in this industry knows that no matter what happens, like if you align with me in any way, shape, or form, they'll make your life a fucking living hell. And some people can handle that heat and they don't give a shit. Some people are totally tapped out of it. But for most people, they're like, I don't want to rock the boat. They've had some successful initiatives in brigading with like Trash Taste podcast, shit like that. My hope is to simply fucking wait it out. Because eventually, when the cultural forces shift, it was really bad when Trump first became president. It was really bad between 2023, the end of 2023, 2024, and 2025. The reason for why it was really bad was because the overall culture had shifted dramatically to the right. Since then, woke has made a comeback in a fairly meaningful capacity. And that's part of the reason why, since woke has made somewhat of a comeback, people are a little bit more open-minded to the things that I'm advocating for, to the things that I push for. They're a little bit more curious about it. Okay? Woke 2.0 has been on the come up. Obviously, none of this has anything to do with normies in the real world, by the way. Most people in the real world like me and have nothing to do. We're talking specifically about the internet. It has a tendency to impact the normie sphere as well. But for the most part, what we're talking about is like Twitch streams, YouTube, commentary sphere, that kind of shit. And one of the greatest examples of this is the treatment that I received, the treatment that a lot of people who are pro-Palestine received for the first 2 years, being inundated with an endless barrage of ridiculous smears, like calling me a terrorist and having no line of defense from my peers. None of them came out and were like, hey, this is really fucking racist. We should stop this. Like woke 1.0, that shit would not have slided. They would have never let that slide. Like if woke 1.0 in like 2020, if a bunch of prominent Twitch streamers were playing, slided. Woke 1.0, if a bunch of prominent Twitch streamers were fucking turning around playing a game called like Twitch Streamer or Terrorist, where they had like prominent Muslim, Arab, pro-Palestine Twitch streamers, and they were being compared to like Osama bin Laden, everybody else in the community would have been like, this is fucking unacceptable. What are you doing? Yeah, they'd get lit up on Twitter. Twitter is very different now. Twitter is very right-wing. That obviously has the capacity to change people's perception of like what is permissible, what is acceptable. It sucks, but that's how it works. But yeah, there is definitely an endless amount of extremely online losers who spend every waking moment on the internet and they spend a good deal of time just trying to make people's life a living hell. And the only thing that they respond to, because they're not like they don't have like a lot of sound political points of view. Like they don't have like a firmly established political point of view at all. And they just simply lean into like vibes in general. And because they do that, when the vibes are right-wing, when they see a lot of like right-wing brigaded comment sections, they think, oh, this is normal. This is what like the majority believes. This is what the cool kids believe. And that's how they establish their political political point of view, their political worldview. But those people are very malleable. Those people have not, they have not committed to a political worldview. They're just going along with what they think the vibes are. It's actually that easy, which is part of the reason why, as I'm saying over and over again, like a lot of these people, many of you have found yourself in the alt-right pipeline back in the day for this exact same reason, right? You probably found yourself in the alt-right pipeline for this exact same reason. You probably watched like Joe Rogan, then you watched a Ben Shapiro video and you were like, oh, these guys are like owning the fucking libtards. It's awesome. And before you knew it, you were, more and more invested in the right-wing sphere. And it took a lot for something to snap you out of it. But that was like the Gamergate era. That never really went away. That agitative propaganda on the right still exists. The algorithm still very much favors reactionary right-wing commentary. It's not a secret, especially on platforms like YouTube, for example. And Twitter plays a big role in this as well. So, yeah. For many of you, I was the guy who snapped you out of it, right? Or eventually, I played a role in your awakening, in your development, in your political development. So I obviously am going to keep doing what I'm doing to varying degrees of success, but we are there. We're definitely there. I think the broader cultural forces are shifting in our direction once again. The pendulum is swinging back. And obviously it's important for all of us to maintain some sort of posture to show people that this kind of attitude is unacceptable. The reactionary point of view is unacceptable, to tell people to not be bigoted. Of course, not in a way where it's like cynical, hollow weaponization of like identity politics as it was in Woke 1.0, from a position of like moral superiority. That was one of the worst aspects of Woke 1.0. I was very critical of that at the time as well, even though, people didn't really listen to me. But, in Woke 2.0, I think we can both have fun and be woke and call out bad behavior. Is the song getting paid by the CCP? I'm getting paid by the viewers. The Piker Broadcasting Service, PBS, the People's Broadcasting Service, is sponsored by you, the people, for you, the people. It was unironically Red Shambhala edits on TikTok that got me out of it. Hey, whatever works for you, man. But yeah, when you see like normies or people who are politically uninitiated develop some kind of like reactionary point of view, don't feel discouraged by that. Don't get upset by that. For the apolitical normies or for the apolitical people on the internet, they don't have a well-established, developed point of view. They don't have a political perspective. They don't have the political education. They don't have class consciousness. Many of them are children anyway. And children are at the mercy of the masses. If they see a brigaded comment section leaning in a reactionary perspective, they think, oh, this is cool. This is what people are into. Eventually, they will grow out of it. They will have an experience in their life, as many right-wingers do, where either they will find themselves at odds with the right-wing movement, or a loved one will be in the crosshairs of a right-wing policy. And that's when they realize, oh, I need to develop empathy for others. Some never do. Obviously, there's a level of intelligence required for this. There's a level of educational attainment required to get there for many. That's part of the reason why the biggest gap in this country politically is not even around how much money someone makes, but what their level of education is. I believe it's like 60 to 70% leaning in the Democratic Party's direction when you have a college degree or above. The highest likelihood that you will vote for the Democratic Party in this country as a demographic is if you have a degree higher than a Bachelor of Arts or Sciences. Like if you have a graduate degree or a master's degree, then it's like you're almost 100% likely to it's the highest likelihood that you will be a Democratic Party voter. You're forgetting this 75% of the yard boys are on your side of the political spectrum? What, 75? No, it's 100% of the yard boys are on my side on the political spectrum. What are you talking about? Yes, when I found you in 2018, I was dating a QAnon believer, but I didn't have any idea what the fuck that was. I would ask him to tell me about it or send me links, but I wasn't willing to share anything and only brought it up rarely. Hasanabi, thanks to you, I learned what the fuck was going on and helped me gain enough awareness to change the trajectory, because the hell was I overlooking before shaking my head? Mobile chatter, by the way. Yeah. There's definitely a huge vibe shift taking place. There's definitely a huge vibe shift taking place right now. And of course, we've always been there. We've been steadfast in our advocacy here in this little corner of the internet. And I will continue doing that. So I will always be open-minded and charitable to those who have gone through their own journey and arrived at this destination. I will welcome them with open arms, and I will always be there to help educate them. One of my political science professors claims this was due to Bill Clinton abandoning the rural working class. How true do you think that is? It's 100% true. So there was an educational attainment change that took place, because back in the day, if you went to college, you were a high income earner. The Republican Party had the vibes of like a country club. Very wealthy people, elitist people were oftentimes, more often than not, Republican, but the overwhelming majority of the blue collar working class were Democrats. Now, this shift actually started in the Nixon era as well. Vietnam, hard hat wearers, like the aesthetics of trying to tap in to the working class. And it obviously accelerated with the Reagan era, culture wars, and you know, getting the working class on board with tax cuts and anti-union initiatives, anti-union legislation. But yes, Bill Clinton and NAFTA was the final blow. NAFTA was the final blow. When those jobs dried up, when those labor unions died out, there was no longer a working class movement that was feeding into the base for the Democratic Party. That's it. Do you feel like that can or could be attributed to college graduates being more exposed to culture? Urban areas of politics seem to always skew Democratic as well. Yes. So political polarization has taken on a very different shape in the United States of America in 2026 in comparison to where it was in the past. That political polarization has been designed around wedge issues. Shout out to Newt Gingrich for this. This is, again, a post-Reagan, first started in the Nixon era, but certainly became the prominent fixture of American politics in the Reagan era, culture wars and wedge issues, where both parties would identify themselves as being in favor of certain values. And this was this designed a wedge between the Republican Party and the things that they advocate for, which is like, you know, anti-abortion, pro-Christianity, pro-small business, fake bullshit, right? And tax cuts and deregulation, right? And the Democratic Party was in opposition to those things, progress, to varying degrees. And also the Democratic Party, I guess, had more ideological diversity about, trade policy and trade protectionism and things of that nature, but it became a much more neoliberal, anti-welfare state party with Bill Clinton, and a free trade party with Bill Clinton. So that established somewhat of a uniparty approach to international trade policy. That established a neoliberal uniparty approach to many of the solutions to the existing problems that people were experiencing. That's precisely the reason why the Democrats since the 90s have barely been able to launch any kind of serious socialization initiatives in the field of healthcare, because they're backed by the same fucking corporate entities, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, and many others. So there's a uniparty in Washington, D.C. Both parties align There's consensus politics in Washington, D.C. between Democrats and Republicans on keeping healthcare private. Democrats want to fund it more with subsidies. Republicans want to take those subsidies away. But ultimately, they're aligned and have arrived at a consensus that it should still remain privatized, right? There's obviously a uniparty consensus politics on American foreign policy. This was post-2001. Global war on terror. That was the last bastion of the anti-war liberalism movement. There were a lot of critics of George W. Bush. Obama killed that, right? Anti-war liberalism died with Barack Obama. Anti-free trade, trade protectionist Democrats died with Bill Clinton. Pro-welfare state liberalism died with Bill Clinton. And anti-war liberalism died with Barack Obama. Okay? That's it. So what you're saying is the Democratic Party actively destroyed itself. Yes, it did. 100%. But fear not. We are currently moving into a different epoch, a different phase of American politics, where we are restoring, maybe even going further beyond the New Deal era of governance. That is definitely where at least we are trying to move the Democratic Party by force in the direction of less of a focus on culture war narratives and more of a focus on hardline economic improvements, class struggle, centering the working class at the heart of our policies. We will, of course, it is, of course, necessary to go further beyond New Deal democracy, New Deal Democrats, in order to ensure that this is a resilient movement. But that is, hopefully, if we are successful, that is where we will move in the direction of socialism, restoring a manufacturing base in the United States of America, if it's even permissible, even if it's even possible. Not only onshoring jobs, onshoring manufacturing, but also making sure that those onshored manufacturing opportunities are not simply increasing economic activity, but it's also bringing back good jobs for people with good benefits, union jobs, creating an environment where there is more political participation from the working class that has been left behind in this country. Because the last 3 decades, the last 4 decades of American politics has been dominated by Ronald Reagan, by Reaganite neoliberalism. Every subsequent Democrat, every Democrat that has come after Ronald Reagan has also been a neoliberal. And yes, this includes Barack Obama as well. It's true. So it is important for us at the peak of the contradictions worsening to help people come to terms with their class position and demand an alternative. Was NAFTA a good thing? Fuck no. What are you, crazy? We have to, Central Committee, thank you for the raid. We have to do away with a culture war first policy platform that the Democratic Party has leaned heavily into because of the consensus politics that I just mentioned. Democrats need to completely flip the script and go balls to the wall and very aggressive on hardline economic progress, on policies of socialization, hopefully policies of nationalization down the line, while simultaneously still mounting a significant defense for marginalized identities and marginalized communities, but never allowing the Republicans to frame the conversation around some of these like edge cases that are commonplace and perfectly normal, but will become a big issue if we allow the Republicans to center the conversation around these issues. You know, high school transgender athletes participating in high school competitions. This is not a real issue. This is not an issue that impacts any American in a significant manner, right? It is a clearly purposefully concocted narrative that was focus tested by the Republicans in an effort to make that the key fixture of American politics. Well, Donald Trump did it. He banned transgender athletes. Did that help you? Do you feel better now? Do you feel like your life is improved in any significant manner? Of course not, because it was always bullshit. It was always a fucking distraction, a very violent one for the tiny minority of transgender people. It's horrible for them, but it's not good for you. So I always say we have to have a vision in the affirmative, a clear, identifiable agenda that people can sink their teeth into, an agenda that centers the working class, an agenda that seeks to improve people's material conditions, an agenda that revolves around expanding the existing social safety nets in very meaningful ways, an agenda that tries to reset the way that American politics have consistently, since the Reagan era, demanded less and less from the wealthy and more from the working stiff, the average Joe. We have to, it's topsy-turvy in this goddamn country and in many other Western capitalist liberal democracies at this point. That is precisely the reason why there has been tremendous wealth consolidation, specifically in the stock market. The bottom 1%, or sorry, the bottom 50% of wealth in this country own 1% of the stock market. The top 10% own 90%. The top 10% of wealth in this country own 90% of the stock market. That's where all of our economic activity is, right? That's everything now. That's everything. And it's built around a hope and a dream. It's not built around market fundamentals any longer, if it ever was. Finance capitalism has destroyed that. We don't have the widget factory any longer. We have no outputs to look at, no KPIs, just vibes. Tech stocks, AI, the same $100 billion exchanging hands between NVIDIA and OpenAI and ChatGPT and all these other fucking companies, right? All of that money is circulating, but it never touches your pockets. It never improves your financial situation. Remember, I'm going to repeat this one more time. This fact is insane. The bottom 50% of wealth in this country own 1% of the stock market. 1%. The top 10% of wealth, on the other hand, own 90% of the stock market, with the overwhelming majority of that ownership coming from the top 1%. So even the multimillionaires are getting fucked over in this country with the amount of unfathomable wealth consolidation. Wealth consolidation and power consolidation is in the hands of fewer and fewer people. Okay? This cannot go on. This is a completely busted system. This avarice, this endless appetite for wealth and power consolidation is never going to stop unless we make it stop, unless we turn it around. It's ridiculous to expect the wealthy to magnanimously turn around and give us back some of the wealth and some of the productive output that we have created sheerly because they're kind people is stupid. It's never going to work. Charity is no adequate substitute to redistributive policies. That we know. That we have seen for the last couple of decades. Anyway, I don't know why I went on this fucking long-ass tangent, dude. But yeah, this is incredible. The wealthiest 0.00001% of Americans now hold a record 12% of U.S. national income. It's gotten to a point where all of the wealth that we are generating, all the wealth that we are creating, all the value that we're creating is staying in the hands of not even like the top 10%, not even the top 1%. It's the 1% of the 1%. Isn't that fucking insane? It's actually incredible because it's worse than the Gilded Age. It's worse than the Roaring 20s. That's how bad wealth disparity has gotten. But of course, technology has allowed us to have very different experiences, so we can do a lot more with a lot less relative wealth. So the average person now in 2026 obviously is far wealthier than the average person in 1926, right? Or, 1919, 1920s. Although the wealth disparity and the power disparity has grown tremendously, the average person is not starving as they did in the Great Depression. Okay? I don't mean to backtrack, but why did you talk about the trans issue in sports like it wasn't important? I could be misunderstanding. No, I did not say that it wasn't important. I said it is important. It's important for every trans person because it's a sequence of events that are carefully concocted to basically erase trans people. But trans people at the end of the day are not even 1% of the population. So from the perspective of 99% of Americans, what happens to trans people in either direction doesn't impact them at all, right? So this isn't a way to say, don't talk about trans issues at all. This is simply a way for me to explain to the average person that all of this harm that Republicans are engaging in, they're doing to dupe you. They're hyper-focusing your entire political interest in 1% of the fucking population. It's ridiculous. That's why I always say to the Republicans that, make their way into this community, do you feel better? Donald Trump put trans people and trans existence in the crosshairs and took the initiative and made it illegal for the 49 transgender athletes to participate in NCAA competitions. Did that improve your life? It did not. It's not about dismissing the trans issue. It's more so saying that we must always maintain a defensive posture for all identities, for all members of the working class, which includes trans people, black people, undocumented migrants. However, we can also call out the fact that this is being weaponized as a distraction by the Republicans who are not improving your living conditions. Here, I'll give you another example. I mean, this is something that is incredible. I mean, all those liberals who said vibe session. Look at this. Grocery shopping, putting a strain on family budgets. Now, if you remember, I've talked about this in the past, sometimes jokingly as the bread theory. Murat loves bringing that up. The price of bread, as long as it is relatively stable, as long as it is relatively affordable and accessible, the price of food, the price of groceries, most Americans are not going to revolt as long as they can get their treats, right? My homie Lenin said it best. Well, my homie Murat is basically, my brother Murat is basically Lenin himself. Something changed. COVID happened. Our just-in-time manufacturing supply lines were unbelievably fragile. They broke apart. They fractured. It was food and groceries became less accessible, more expensive. We saw a tremendous spike in the prices of groceries, also known as inflation. But that price did not go down when the supply lines opened up. When the global supply chain issues were solved, prices kept going up and up and up, what is known as greedflation. And at the time, when we on the left called this out as greedflation, that could only take shape because of the corporate consolidation. This can only happen when the Western liberal capitalist markets only have a handful of companies that own everything, by the way. If there was true market competition in the way that capitalism is intended to create a free market, the freer the markets, the freer the people, they say. Well, we, of course, believe that this is the most honest expression of capitalism. Monopolization is the most honest expression of capitalism. That is precisely what companies try to do. That's the greatest market advantage you can have when you're the sole provider of goods, when you can set the price. What we have right now is an oligopolistic structure. Wealth consolidation and corporate consolidation has made it so that price leadership is super easy. Price fixing, remember, is illegal, right? You can't go into a cigar smoke-filled back room and get together and operate a cartel unless you're OPEC, right? You can't do that. You can't set a price and then everybody else agrees with you. That's illegal, technically. But what you can do is a concept that is perfectly legal. It's called price leadership. Price fixing is illegal. Price leadership is perfectly legal. So I'll give you one example. Airlines. In the Reagan era, there were hundreds of different airlines in many different markets. Nowadays, there's like 1 or 2 in certain smaller markets and 4 or 5 if you're lucky. Not a lot of competition there. If there were 200 different alternatives in the airliner industry, right, it would be a lot more difficult for one company to decide we're actually going to charge for your luggage. Because other companies that don't charge for the luggage would then get away with being a cheaper alternative, a less costly alternative. People would just go to the company that's not charging you for your luggage. But when there's only 1 or 2 companies and one airliner decides to charge for your luggage, all of the other airliners also follow suit. This is known as price leadership. Okay? Yes, another concept is price fixing is illegal, price leadership is legal, tax evasion is illegal, tax avoidance is legal. It's the same thing. Okay? And for the record, there is still a lot of price fixing that goes on. Make no mistake. But we don't really have a regulatory body that is invested in tackling these issues any longer. So you get the short end of the stick. You as the consumer, you as the worker, don't get all of the value that you provide, don't get all the value you generate, and you as the consumer then go home and are fucked over by the same corporations. They raise your prices, and there's nothing you can do about it. What are you going to do? You're not going to survive without eating eggs, right? This is price leadership, greedflation. Companies realized that people had the capacity to pay more for the same goods, and they kept prices relatively high. Prices never went down. Prices adjusted a little bit. Inflation was coming under control. But this right here, this 2021 till 2023 spike was negative real wage growth. If your groceries are more expensive, but your wages don't go up, if you only get a 1% increase in your wages, let's say, or 5% increase in your wages, but the grocery prices went up 30%, that means you are now 25% poorer than you were from the year prior. That's a negative real wage loss. It was so much fun to have been totally right about the vibe session being totally wrong. It doesn't matter. We're always right. But it doesn't matter because nobody fucking listens to us when we're right, because we're right too early, Michael. If you're right too early, look, this is what I've learned in my last, 13 years of being a fucking political commentator who's a socialist, who's an anti-imperialist. Being right too early doesn't do shit. Nobody ever goes, you know what? This guy was saying this all along. Maybe he was fucking right. Maybe I should listen to him this time around. You know what they do? The resentment carries. They'll agree with you, but they'll still resent you because they never forget how you made them feel. Same with fucking Palestine. Same with Vibe Session being totally wrong. Same with all of the things that we said about Kamala Harris's campaign falling apart and how her loss was likely, that this was a major gamble. None of those liberals, even ones who actually recognized that we were right, have turned around and been like, maybe we should listen to you this time around. Maybe we should listen to you this time around. No, that doesn't happen. They just remember you as the guy who delivered them the bad news from the start. The bad news that did not want, the bad news that they did not want to hear. The bad news that made them feel bad. And instead of feeling bad, they wanted to feel good. And to feel good, what did they do? They succumbed to their biases. They sought information that would agree with them. They sought out outlets that would tell them, no, Kamala Harris is fucking doing amazing. She's going to win for sure. Don't listen to these fucking radical wokes to the Kamala Harris left. They're all terrorists. They all hate Israel because they're Jew haters. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to those people. It actually makes perfect sense for the vice presidential debate to start off with, will you sign off on a nuclear first strike against Iran? That's perfectly normal. That's what they said. And they never took accountability over their actions. Look at Matt Iglesias. He's a great example of this. One of the biggest entitled, smug elitist that was professionally wrong the entire time. Was there any accountability for any of the advisors? No. They're still fighting that exact same battle. Don't most of the stats say real wages are increasing in average? It depends on where they're increasing overall. But this was, for the overwhelming majority of Americans, negative real wage. This was a negative real wage growth. Okay? This is where people's salaries did not catch up to people's expenses. So they literally were poorer year over year. And what's supposed to happen? What's supposed to happen is year over year, the amount of money you make is supposed to go up. You're no longer a 5-year experienced employee. You're now a 6-year experienced employee. You have an extra year under your belt. Your wages are supposed to go up. You're now more experienced. You're now more productive. But if the cost of goods is going up, and this is just the groceries and shit, we haven't even got, that is just the groceries. This is the one line that's supposed to be relatively stable no matter what. That's the last bastion of defense. When this falls apart, when that spikes, the working class start getting real mad for good reason. We're not even talking about housing right now. We're not even talking about healthcare. Housing, healthcare, and education, the 3 key necessities for upward social mobility and for survival. Housing and healthcare have inelastic demand. And yet, there is, and I'm going to bring this back to the thing that I was talking about already, uniparty consensus in Washington, D.C. Uniparty consensus on keeping housing private no matter what for profiteers as a speculative asset. And there is uniparty consensus on healthcare in the same exact way. There are differing opinions in the Hill for what Democrats want to do. They want to subsidize it endlessly, but they want to still keep it private. That is what we have to change. So yeah, but I do think that the socioeconomic conditions have worsened to such a degree that people are now more and more aware of this game. They at least feel in their hearts this resentment, this unease. They recognize that something is not right. So it's important for us as socialists to explain to them the design of this machine that fucks them over, that stiffs workers at the behest of bosses. That's what we have to do. And it's not easy because a lot of people don't want to experience any change whatsoever, even when shit's really messed up. Americans look at a problem and will be the first to tell you that the solution to the problem is the same problem, more of it. To demand more of the same reasons why the problem persists. Look at gun violence in this country. Gun violence is a great example of this issue. Okay? The average American looks at gun violence and says, we have too much of it. We have to put a stop to it. What are we to do? The solution from the right is more guns. Oh, you want to stop school shootings? Arm the teachers. How is that going to stop the fucking school shootings? It's going to make it more likely to have school shootings. And the same issue persists for capitalism in general. A lot of Americans are deluded into thinking. They've been deluded into thinking. They're blinded by ideology. They're blinded by dogmatic pro-capitalist thought into believing that the solution to capitalism and all of its failures is more capitalism. There are plenty of Americans who believe this. That's why they say, no, no, no. It's because free markets have never been tried. The freer the market, the freer the people. Free markets have never been tried. Real capitalism has never been tried. Well, we say real capitalism has been tried. You're experiencing it right now. This is a more real version of capitalism than one that your parents experienced when there was a top marginal tax rate of 92%. That was a less real version of capitalism. This is a real version of capitalism. Your grandparents did not experience a real version of capitalism when they were still benefiting from the GI Bill, when they were still eating good off of the mass industrialization that took place, the centralized economy that had to take shape because of the war efforts, and the residual benefits that they experienced from that after in the post-war economy. They never saw real capitalism. We're seeing it right now. And every day that goes by, where wealth consolidation grows in the hands of lesser and lesser people, we get to experience a more real capitalism. It's that simple. Fewer and fewer people. Sorry. In any case, I digress. I went on that was an hour and 30-minute long rant for some weird reason. I don't know why. I was in a rant mood today. I saw that grocery price, the grocery prices graph, and it made me fucking lose my mind. Trump is live, by the way. Here, let's listen to the fucking. Let's look at these assholes.
Not bad business, but no, we have 19.2 trillion. It's the biggest number ever spent in any country by far, and that's over a period of 1 year. As an example, as you know, the Biden administration for 4 years did much less than 1 trillion. We're doing 19.2 trillion in 1 year. So we have things that are happening in our country, the likes of which nobody's ever seen. Plants and factories are moving in. Toyota just announced they're building one of the largest car plants anywhere in the world, and truck plants anywhere in the world. We are building more automobile plants now than at any time in the history of our country.
Mr. President, Dulles in particular, this is just one of several projects that you have underway in the DMV. Why would you say that you're so focused on transforming the Washington region right now?
Well, this is an important one. You know, this is travel. So in terms of the importance, I think the Arc is going to be incredible. I think the protected ballroom and military center that we're building at the White House is going to be unbelievable. It's very important. But, you know, this is the airport. This is sort of the lifeblood of a city or a capital, certainly a capital. And this will go from one of the worst, just like Washington. Washington was one of the worst places in this country, and now it's one of the best. you couldn't get into a restaurant because all the restaurants were closing or closed. They were afraid to have it open. Now you can't, if you're a restaurateur, you can't even find space to have a restaurant. The restaurants are booming. So, you know, it's a great thrill. And by the way, if you look, Washington is clean, it's safe, people walk to work. Every day a young man or a young woman comes up and says, "Thank you, sir." I know exactly what he's talking about. They were afraid to walk to work. Now they literally walk to the White House. Washington is now a beautiful and clean. We got rid of the graffiti. 78 monuments and different things have been cleaned. They were strewn with graffiti. We had 28 fountains that not one of them worked. For years, for decades, they haven't worked. They're all up in service, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have it clean. We're changing all the grass in all the parks. That's going to be changed very shortly. The parks are, because the grass is very, you know, grass is like human beings. Grass has a life also. And we're changing, we're raking, cleaning, and changing all of the parks. We don't have people, we don't have the tents anymore. We don't have all the barbed wire up. We don't have the wire up. Washington's become a beautiful city. It's become a hot city. But, you know, even more importantly, the United States right now is the hottest country anywhere in the world.
Mr. President, just a point of clarity on the airport. No federal funding will be required. What did you mean when you said Congress may need to approve?
So it's going to be bonded for $22.5 billion. United is going to partake in part of the payment, but the airlines who participate in the project are going to pay for it. If I can just make one point of clarification.
Yeah, please.
We have some permitting we have to do, but we think in the spring, this is both Concourse A. We think we can start construction in the spring of next year. So we're trying to move at the speed of President Trump. It's never fast enough, but we're going as quickly as possible so we can give a deliverable to the American people.
And the other thing Sean's doing, which I think is so important, maybe more important, I don't know if it can be more important than this, but he's working on air traffic control. We have an obsolete system. It's 50 years old. You saw the helicopter crash a year ago into a plane. That was a disaster.
They're going to do AI.
And,
they're going to do less
like
TSA,
bells would have
less
gone
air
off
traffic, less
4 or 5 minutes
ATC.
before it happened. You would have heard
Less
the bells and
ATC,
whistles
more
would have gone
AI.
off. And a thing like that couldn't have happened if you had proper
They're going to do
air
air traffic control.
So
I
what's
swear to
happened
God. Oh, by the way,
is,
shouts out to Ronald Reagan.
we're
He's the one who
working very
fucked this.
hard on getting the finest in the country now in the world. We've examined the systems of almost every good country in terms of air traffic control all over the world, and we have the best people working on it in the world. And it'll make, I mean, so often you'll see somebody even bunking into each other at an airport, but where planes come too close, where planes, in the case of the helicopter the helicopter hits the plane, we are working on air traffic control to redo the entire system, including the new towers, because the towers are obsolete. You know, you don't think of it. You see a tower and it looks fine. You go into those towers, they're literally falling down. So we're talking about new towers and all new air traffic control, which will give us the safest anywhere in the world.
Mr. President,
Why do you think Dr. Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment so many times today when he has the pardon? And what was stopping him from just giving an honest testimony this morning?
Well, look, I've never been a big fan of Fauci. Why he did that was very simple. His lawyer told him to. You know, I don't know if he would have been better off not doing it. There were a lot of questions that I guess he could have answered, and some maybe he didn't feel comfortable in answering, but his lawyer told him to do that.
Mr. President, on Iran.
Prime Minister Andy Burnham hasn't mentioned publicly migration at all since he's gone into number 10. Did you discuss it with him?
I did, briefly. He's going to have to mention it because it's killing your country.
Mr. President.
Killing you.
He won't talk to Judy News.
He's killing your country.
He won't talk to him.
And not him. I mean, we'll have to see. I know Starmer did very little about it. And they're coming from all over the world. They're coming from Africa. They're coming from South America. They're coming from different parts of Asia. And they're invading Europe. I mean, they're invading Europe. It's an invasion. And the UK is a prime suspect.
Mr. President.
On Todd Blanche, Senator John Cornyn of Texas has been hesitant to back the confirmation. Seems to be some sort of deal that he's
Dog, this is literally, this is straight up reheated Nazi propaganda. Okay? oh, the German economy is bad, not because of the decisions that we've made in entering World War I, but the German economy is actually bad because of Jews, because of socialists, because of trade unions, because of communists. Also another word for Jews. Okay? So in order to solve the problem, in order to fix our economy, what we have to do is put the Jews in concentration camps. That is the argument. The situation is worsening as liberalism is failing, as capitalism is failing. The contradictions are worsening. And the reactionary right, once again, is turning to fascism. It's the same exact argument. Oh, it's because of the refugees. Oh, it's because of the workers that don't look like you that are coming here. Okay? It's the transgenders. It's the homosexuals. It's the workers that don't look like you and don't think like you. That's what the problem is. As soon as we put those guys in the camps, everything is going to be good. Well, that's not the case. The problem is wealth consolidation. The problem is capitalism failing. Now, the problem is, while this crisis is worsening in the entire Western world, there is no counterbalance like there was one in an otherwise revolutionary time. There is no USSR. I guess the closest we can arrive at is, modern China, People's Republic of China, which he's railing on right now, I guess. Let's see what he says.
So it's bigger than the internet ever was. It's bigger than anything ever was. So I don't want to restrict. I know many of these people. I don't want to restrict them from doing great work. There's very little they can do about it. It was a different group than we're dealing with. They've already apologized. But, we got to smack them a little bit.
Kai, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Will I always hit back? Pretty much.
Mr. President, just on a point of clarity on that, sir, is that in response to the attempted ballistic missile strike on Jordan last night? When you say it's our turn to hit back?
Yeah, I think more so that, because it was another smaller event. But no, they sent 8,000-mile-an-hour missiles.
She rejected me. She doesn't love me no more. No, there's someone at the door. That's why she has to monitor.
Namely the Patriot system. Think of it. 5 missiles going 8,600 miles an hour, big ones, coming right at us, and all 5 were shot down. How about that, right? Pretty good. Nobody else could do that but us. Yeah, it's very simple. I get along with both. I get along with President Putin. I get along with President Zelensky. Like I told him, I wanted to end the war, get the war ended. Thousands of people, 25,000 people died last month. That's standard. And it's not acceptable. So I said, just end the war.
Mr. President, on the war, do you want the House to come back before August 31st to act on the Russia and Iran sanctions bill after it
clears the Senate? Well, if it's necessary. I mean, it shouldn't be necessary, to be honest. But if it's necessary, I'd like to, are you talking about the Lindsey Graham?
Yeah.
So I'd like them to add Iran as tariffs, not just as sanctions. I think it's important. That's what Lindsey wanted, because I heard that they have tariffs on Russia, but not on those 5 countries with having to do with Iran. I'd like to see tariffs.
Why isn't the dog allowed to leave the room? The dog clearly wants to leave the small room, Law.
You're very good at this. You can maybe tell them. I think they should put in.
You must be new here. The dog leaves the room all the time. I'm trying to pet her. Am I allowed to pet my fucking dog? You're an 11-month subscriber. The dog. First of all, she has a name. Her name is Kaya. And yes, contrary to what the internet thinks, she leaves this room all the time. Why isn't the dog allowed to gamble? She leaves the room all the time. Not only does she leave the room all the time, she opens the door on her own. Gotta be a hate-watching Clipper hate sub? Yes, she knows how to open the door. It's fucking insane. I can't even pet my fucking dog without people being like, "Oh my God, why are you torturing your dog with your pets? What are we doing here? What is this backseat fucking, dog trainer shit?" What do you think about Josh Turek, Iowa Senate? He's talking about Zoran.
There's no way they can get elected if that happens. But we should have unanimous Republican support. And if we don't, people should look at those Republicans. But think of it. Who would not sign voter identification with photo And who would not sign proof of citizenship? Only people that want to cheat. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, guys.
Thank you, Bev.
Why are you still responding to them? You know, they just want to bait you for a clip. I know, but it's so fucking ridiculous. Like, yes, dude, I'm going to pet my fucking dog. You know what I mean? I'm going to pet my fucking dog whenever I want to. You can suck my dick. It's ridiculous. Josh Turek is DNC supported and lib of all libs. I mean, I don't even give a shit. I know Obama came out in support of Josh Turek. I don't care. It's fucking Iowa. Like, better than a Republican. You know what I mean? I'm not going to like go crazy over it, but obviously that's the established Democrat. They won. Now the contest is between a Democrat and a Republican. What, do you think I'm going to be in favor of the Republican? No, of course not. I wish that it was an exciting candidate, right? Because I still believe that a candidate that's like a little bit more radical, even in a place like Iowa, I think would probably do a better job. But hey, that's not what the cards hold, right? I mean, he won. It sucks, but I'm trying to pet my dog. Now replace pet with shock. Not so funny now, is it? True. One of the Dems put up a one-item bill to mandate free government IDs and then let Republicans vote it down to show the truth, because showing the truth doesn't fucking mean anything. When has showing the truth meant anything? I mean, the Democrats tried to do that with immigration, right? Remember when the Democrats were like, we are the party that's serious about immigration. We are going to do Trump's 2020 agenda on immigration. We're going to build the wall, all this stuff, right? And they put forward a border bill that was unbelievably right-wing, that was written by the Oklahoma senator. And that was their last attempt at showing the world the truth, showing the Americans the truth. Who struck that down? Trump did. He struck it down because he wanted to maintain the argument that Democrats are insincere on immigration. They want, third world migrants to come in and pour through our borders. It's never worked. This idea of like conceding to the Republican position and trying to make it seem like the Democrats are the party that's more serious about these like right-wing policies has never worked, and it will never work. And I called that shit out. I called that shit out nonstop way back when. It was a failure, a spectacular failure. And now we got this dumbass, incompetent fascist dipshit in charge. Partially with that reason. Partially because of that attitude. Moderates are more serious, could sum up Hong's opponents in last night's debate. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. This is a great example of being a phony on the right. Peter Thiel's blood boy, J.D. Vance, happily meeting with the real president of the United States of America, next to the fake president of the United States of America, and next to the vice president to the fake president of the United States of America, happily. Mr. Israel skeptic himself. Wow, that's right, JD. Israel does want to influence U.S. public opinion, and Epstein had Mossad connections. Oh, you're just going to stand there because you don't want to do the Zelensky thing to Netanyahu? Oh, well, guess I'll just keep thinking that the Vance that exists in my head is real. Yeah, Tucker Carlson loves JD Vance, by the way. Remember that. That's another side of this story. We are the only serious Israel critics. We are the only serious people that want to sever this unfathomable loyalty campaign that we've had towards Israel for the last 80 years. Okay? No one else in American politics is serious about this issue. I need you to understand that. And I think you all already understand that, but we got to make sure everyone else understands that. Okay? And if the Democratic Party is resistant to that change, well, then we'll keep fucking winning. All right? They got the money. They got the wealth. They got the power. But we have something that they will never have. The people. Have you seen the new numbers for Abdul El-Sayed post-debate? Plus 11, plus 16, plus 13? Yes. You are not a politician. Great observation. The fuck does that have to do with anything? Oh, people? I was going to say integrity. Yes, we have integrity. But integrity doesn't carry you across the finish line. Integrity alone will not help you win. Integrity alone will not allow us to make the necessary changes in American politics. We need the numbers. And lucky for us, and disastrous for them, we have the numbers. All right. We'll get to, racism dial about to be turned up to 8,000. Yeah, new Senate polls from Tavern show LSAT up 11, way past the margin of error. Tolchin showing LSAT at up 16. Data FP showing LSAT up plus 13. But do not get comfortable. We still got to keep pushing. We still have to keep pushing. Fetterman versus Drop Site.
Julian Andrioni.
I like that Fetterman puts on a suit when his boss is in town. Oh my God, I didn't even realize he's wearing a suit here, and it's definitely because Benjamin Netanyahu's here.
Drop Site News.
Oh, you're Drop Site. Oh, no, it's like a race between who's the more pro-Hamas, Drop Site or Zidio. So now I got both.
Zidio. Zidio. Bro, he's such a fucking ogre, dude. This pro-Hamas. Oh my God, he's such a fucking ogre, dude. It's awesome. Prem also cooked him. All right, let's start here then. Let's start with Zidio.
Oh, Zidio. Oh, yes, yeah, the pro-Hamas.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure about that.
I don't know why your network's so pro-Hamas.
I'm asking you about American
Jesus Christ.
public opinion, Senator. Hey there, Senator. How you doing?
Who are you with?
Prem Tucker with Zateo. How are you?
Huh?
Prem Tucker with Zateo. How are you?
I'm sorry. Let's try that one more time.
Sure, yeah, you're okay. Prem Tucker with Zateo.
Tucker?
Yes.
Tucker Carlson?
No, like Tucker Carlson. Prem Tucker with Zateo.
Oh, Zidio. Oh,
Yes,
yeah, the pro
yes.
Hamas.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
You guys
Just
are great, like Drop Site. You know, the pro Hamas, pro Hezbollah.
pro international law, Senator. But anyways, what did you make of that?
I want to apologize to the Zidio fans. Keep killing the Hamas leadership, and also the Iranian too.
On that note, Senator, what did you make? What did you make of what did?
The pro-Hamas. The pro-Hamas. Dude did a racism and lead harder into the racism is incredible. Yeah. Oh, Tucker, like Tucker Carlson.
That's okay, Senator. What did you make of the poll that showed Americans supporting arresting Benjamin Netanyahu at a 22-point margin?
I don't know why your network's so pro-Hamas.
I'm asking you about American public opinion, Senator. American public opinion.
I don't understand it. Why do your readership love?
I'm asking about American public opinion, Senator. American public opinion, Senator. American support arresting Benjamin Netanyahu at a 22-point margin, Senator.
Yeah, and why does El Sayed? When we
Senator, I'm talking.
What the fuck does El Sayed have to do with anything? It's another brown guy, just like you. You're brown. And you know who else is brown? Abdul El Sayed. I got so excited. Me brain not work too good. Oh, he's not out of breath because he can't walk. He's out of breath because he's using every fucking processor remaining in his brain. It's firing off on all cylinders. That's why he's out of breath. This is literally computing at the highest level for him, okay? Having to manually walk, manually breathe, and manually hear, comprehend, and respond? Are you fucking kidding me?
About American public opinion?
Julian Andrioni.
Who are you with?
Drop Site News.
Oh, you're Drop Site. Oh, no, it's like a race between who's the more pro-Hamas, Drop Site or Zidio. So now I got both. Hi. Hi, everybody. Yeah.
You mind if I ask you a question really quick? It's about.
I just want to say, I want your viewers to say how much I love to watch Israel eliminating the Hamas leadership.
Then you may
overall.
like this
I know
question.
that upsets a lot of your viewers and a lot of your founders.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's a great thing. So there's
President
no news
Trump-
coming out of me. I'm going to always
President
back
Trump said that.
Israel. The
President
question
Trump-
is, where does your trash outlet come from, and who's funding it? And now,
Our
if you
readers, we
think,
have 46,000 individual donors.
your founders think it's appropriate to attack and kill Israeli civilians, that should be the news overall. And now you're sticking a microphone in my face. So,
on your face, Senator.
so there's not any news here. So
President Trump-
I think the question is, why does drop?
Wait.
You think
6,000 individual
your
donors.
founders think it's appropriate to attack and kill Israeli civilians? That's
Israeli civilians! What? Dude, stop. Oh my God. Why does he sound so winded? Okay, he is using every ounce of processing power he has remaining to answer questions. Okay, he's stupid. His brain is no good. How else can I explain it? He is literally a vegetable. He has the operating capacity of a sea cucumber. Okay, you tickle his belly and his tentacles will come out. That's it. He's overheating. He's overheating. This is far too difficult. Show chat what his CPU looks like. Yeah, that's it. It's fucking fried. And nowadays, a stick of RAM is $900, so we can't even fucking download more RAM. It's over. The civilians. McConnell versus Fetterman in the marketplace of ideas. Who wins? We all lose, man.
that should be the news overall. And now you're sticking a microphone in my face. So,
It's on your face, Senator.
So there's not any news here. So
President Trump-
I think the question is, why does Drop Site love Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah so much? I think that's the news. Yeah. I mean, are you okay with taking your paycheck from these kind of people?
Are you okay with Prime Minister Netanyahu being
I'm
in the
okay,
United
and
States?
I love killing Hamas leadership.
Bro's running on Pentium 3, okay? Like shit that your iPhone would not work on, okay? Your iPhone OS will not work on Pentium 3. That's what he's operating on. Holy boomer. What is a Pentium? See, fuck you guys, okay? Yes, I'm 35. Shut up. His number one retort nowadays is, oh, you must be mad because we killed all your buddies in Hamas. We killed all your buddies in Hamas. That's what it is. That's what he learned. He downloaded a new talking point from his Israeli handler. It is kind of wild that I think it was New York Magazine, right? That just like openly showed that John Fetterman, the ogre, literally just has an Israeli handler. And we just let that happen. Like it's incredible to me that this is a real thing that's going on right now, that there is a straight up Israeli handler that now controls everything that John Fetterman does. Like all of it. Scheduling, talks, meetings, everything that he's doing is being filtered through his straight up Israeli handler. Yep, there it is. It was the Intelligencer from New York Magazine. The man who explains Israel to John Fetterman, how a little known writer became one of the senator's closest confidants. He has an aide. It's not even an aide. It's a random, he is a random dual citizen, a random Jewish American Israeli citizen that just one day, I'm not even kidding. Read the fucking article. We read it. We covered it. We covered it when it first came out. Just a random guy that happened to become his closest friend and confidant out of nowhere. It's insane. Can somebody make dollars with 2028 Super PAC Pennsylvania for common sense or whatnot that attacks crazy left-wing Democrats for not renominating Fetterman because they're not going to renominate him? Cut out the middleman and nominate his AIPAC handler before you renominate Fetterman, for fuck's sake. Completely psychotic for anyone anywhere on the ideological spectrum to renominate him. Yeah. But yeah, this is also, speaking of John Fetterman, new 2028 Senate poll, Pennsylvania, someone else, 58%. Fetterman, 40%. He was spotted right after that elevator ride, by the way. Wait, something I never noticed. Is that like artillery or gunshots in the background? I've watched the video a million times, never with the sound on, I guess. That's added sound. This was in Tel Aviv. Okay, is this actually him? I cannot confirm nor deny whether this is actually John Fetterman or not. It kind of looks like him, though. Why would I expect this not to be him? That's the real question. Home pause. He's going to drown. Yeah. If there's one guy who would drown in that shallow water, it would be John Fetterman. Like, oh, I've forgotten how to manually breathe. Oh, Hamas. All right. Let's get to situation monitoring. PodSafe thinks we should make fun of Fetterman. Yeah, okay, they're wrong. Okay, they're wrong. It's fine. It's fine to be wrong.
Your comment is getting taken out of context. Like people are suggesting.
He said, "Oh, well, sorry, I didn't mention that." He said, "This will help me put an ogre on a pike."
Right, which is about John Fetterman. People are suggesting he was comparing Haley Stevens to an ogre. It does not sound like he was doing that in any way. But also, don't call John Fetterman an ogre. You know, it's not helpful. I think it kind of plays into this belief among a lot of Democrats that the left wing of the party is far more focused on going after moderate Democrats than Republicans.
No, I think there's a difference. I think Abdul Al-Sayed and his, treatment of like Elisa Slotkin, for example, which has been unbelievably cordial, versus John Fetterman makes sense. John Fetterman is no longer just a moderate Democrat, right? John Fetterman is just a Republican. Many moderate Democrats are also simply Republicans in Democrat clothing, right? But John Fetterman is an ogre. He is a collaborator. He is the most far right. He is more far right than most Republican senators at this point. I'll give you an example. John Fetterman, whose wife, soon to be ex-wife, probably, allegedly, was an undocumented migrant. John Fetterman used to be pro-amnesty. He had a personal experience with this, and he talked about it, and it was a real personal story. You know, his wife is Brazilian. She didn't have the proper paperwork. She finally got it. It was a huge deal, right? John Fetterman is now to the right of Mike DeWine on the issue of immigration. Mike DeWine is the governor of Ohio. Mike DeWine came out yesterday and directly criticized Donald Trump for removing temporary protected status from Haitians in this country. Haitians, up until now, up until the past couple of weeks, had temporary protected status, which means that they had proper clearance, proper authorization to live and work in places like Ohio. This was a huge campaign issue, if you guys recall. Springfield, Ohio, the Haitians are eating cats and dogs, because Republicans just chose to lie about it. They said Haitians actually stormed Springfield, Ohio. They ruined the economy. They ruined the demographics of Springfield, Ohio. Meanwhile, most of the Republicans and most of the people living in Springfield, Ohio, with the exception of some crackheads that they found, were actually pretty happy about the influx of Haitian migration into Springfield, Ohio, because it actually turned the economy around. Another one of these forgotten towns that now had an influx of economic activity, cash, workers. It was good. More tax revenue for Springfield, Ohio. Okay? It caused the revival. One of the greatest examples of this is Hazleton, Pennsylvania. It's another forgotten town that was left behind, that was overwhelmingly white, and then there was an influx of Latino migration into Hazleton, which then created small businesses, created economic activity. Hazleton. Hazeltown? Is it Hazeltown or Hazelton? Whatever. It's one of those towns, okay? Hazleton started booming as a consequence of this. Nat Geo actually did a profile on this. It was Trump won, right? The town was on the verge of bankruptcy across the board. People had left it behind. No one cared about it. And then Latinos started moving to Hazleton. And when they started moving there was a lot more economic activity. There was a lot more labor. There was a lot more commerce. And it led to a town revival. But it also changed the ethnic makeup of the town. All of a sudden you had, Mexican, Guatemalan food stores and markets and things of that nature. Tucker Carlson famously criticized this change. He said, it's not good that the town is experiencing a revival if the white natives to Hazleton are being displaced. That's what he I remember covered extensively at the time. It's ridiculous. And a similar situation is taking place in Springfield, Ohio, where the locals like it, the business owners like it. A lot of people actually appreciate their new neighbors. And yet the racists from outside of Springfield, Ohio, hate it. And they try to use it as an example of what happens when you allow unlimited migration to take root in a town that was forgotten. Hassan deadass thinks the entirety of South America is Guatemala. Have never seen him mention another single other country south of Mexico. Okay, I'll fucking download Dominican Republic into the lexicon. Okay, I'll download other South American countries. I just use Guatemala as like as a catch-all. Okay, Honduras, Nicaragua. I'll never say Argentina, Venezuela, El Salvador. Anyway, bad clips, bro. What is bad clips? Yeah, it's awful to see these non-Ohio people talk down to our neighbors. Anyone working blue collar or in manufacturing here knows Latino and Haitian immigrants are great workers and great neighbors, great communities. Real Ohioans get it. Yeah. So the reason why I brought this up is because we were talking about John Fetterman. So the Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, came out after the Trump administration made a decision to revoke hundreds of thousands of Haitians that currently have TPS to take away their temporary protected status, putting their immigration status in legal limbo, basically, simply to lean into some of the most reactionary white nativist elements in American society, the last remaining 20% of like white evangelical racists who just want to fucking purge all of the non-white ethnics from the American boundary, right? Because it's just for those guys with no real positive economic gains that will come from this decision anyway. And for the record, we can have a separate conversation on whether or not it would be appropriate to do something so inhumane, even if there was an economic advantage, but there is none. So we don't even have to have that conversation. Ohio's Republican Governor Mike DeWine is opposing the Trump administration's move to arrest and deport Haitians following its decision to end the temporary protected status this week, calling it a mistake and a blow to the state of Ohio. This puts Mike DeWine in the woke category in comparison to fucking John Fetterman. Mike DeWine is now further to the left than John Fetterman. John Fetterman, whose wife, maybe ex-wife, soon to be ex-wife, was undocumented. John Fetterman, who ran on amnesty. John Fetterman, who ran on empathy towards undocumented immigrants, is now further to the right than the Republican governor of Ohio. This is what I'm talking about when I say this guy is a separate thing in and of itself. He's not just a Republican senator, he's one of the most right-wing Republican senators. John Fetterman, I mean. He's no longer a Pino. He's no longer a Dino. He's basically one of the most far-right Republicans in office right now. DeWine said in an interview with CBS Monday that immigration and customs enforcement operations against the Haitian community would be bad for Ohio's economy and that of Springfield in particular, where many Haitians have settled. These are people who have helped Springfield really come back, DeWine said to CBS, explaining the Haitians have filled jobs and opened businesses where the economy once struggled. The Haitians who are living there and employed there, they came there to work. And they came there because there were jobs that were not being filled by other people. DeWine also noted that Haiti's security and political situation is still unstable, with gangs controlling large parts of the country and the capital, Port-au-Prince. The State Department has warned Americans not to travel there, and DeWine described the country as being in a virtual chaos with no semblance of government. Haiti is hell today, so you'd be sending people back to hell, DeWine said. Very few of those Haitians will voluntarily go back to Haiti. If they have to leave, they'll go someplace else. They want to work. They want to support their family. They don't want to go back to Haiti. To the Trump administration, none of this matters. White House advisor Stephen Miller is excited at the prospect of deporting Haitians. He has claimed that Haiti is safe for Haitians and celebrated the Supreme Court's ruling allowing the administration to end temporary protected status. We can finally remove these Haitian illegal migrants, Miller said. Literally not illegal until you revoke their TPS. Ironically enough. So yeah, I don't have a problem calling John Fetterman a fucking ogre.
In the Middle East and concerns that the pause in the fighting between the U.S. and Iran is over. American and Saudi forces say they launched precision strikes against militias backed by Iran, and Tehran fired ballistic missiles toward American forces. U.S. commanders call it an attempted
What is this? Why would your mods keep not letting me post about Hazleton? I live near there. I live near Hazleton. The town is white trash anyways. The immigration is much needed. Fuck Shitterman. Why do your mods not keep letting me post about Hazleton? I live near there. Hi, a Hazleton expert here. Chat, let me talk to him, please. I live near Hazleton. Interview me, please. Chat, help. Yeah, brother, I'm probably not going to interview about Hazleton, but you can drop a comment about like what the resurgence of the town looked like in the last decade or so. Okay. I lived here in Kentucky. This law, thank God, was removed, but I'll be honest, a black man, I don't think this was a racist act. This was just shitty law that was put in place in Kentucky. Chat still arguing about Dom Rep, you fucking idiots. It's still Latin America. I'm Cuban and still Latino American. Colombia, Honduras, Panama, Costa Rica, Bolivia, Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, Jamaica. All right. We're going to start here. U.S. and Saudi joint strikes on Iraq. This comes after Iran did something unique. Yesterday, Iran launched a salvo of missiles in the direction of U.S. bases in Jordan. They did this unprompted. They did this without getting hit first by American forces. That was new. Iran, I believe, if this is not like a, random hardliner deciding to go beast mode in their mosaic structure, and instead is, a deliberate first strike, Iran is now moving into a different posture in this ongoing war. What do I mean by this? So far, in the last couple of months, throughout the entirety of Operation Epic Fury, also known as Epstein's Fury, Iran has always responded. Iran has always responded to strikes from the American side, strikes from the Israeli Air Force. When I say unprompted, I don't mean they're totally invalid for doing this. They're at war. But the posture from the Iranian side is changing a little bit. And it's important to recognize that. This means that they are willing to engage in non-retaliatory strikes. Up until this moment, all of their strikes were defensive. You could call it defensive. It's tit for tat. American strike Iran, or rather Iran notices America and commercial shipping being violated, like the MOU being violated, and ships transiting through the Omani coastline in the Strait of Hormuz being defended by the Americans, and they strike at those ships to keep the leverage that they have over the Strait of Hormuz and keep the MOU intact. and then America strikes at Iran directly, and then Iran strikes back at the Gulf. Now, this is a non-retaliatory strike. So the posture is different. And it's important because if this continues, that means Iran is now trying to get into the driver's seat. Because up until this moment, as I said, it was more a reactive response, a proportional reactive response from the Iranian side. This will still be proportional, of course, but instead of a retaliatory strike, this is now going to dictate the tone of the theater and give the escalation capacity to Iran. Sina Tusi also noticed this, and he reports, this would mark the first time Iran has initiated direct strikes against U.S. forces in this war. The aim may be to deny Washington to a tactical pause to let oil prices fall, sustain pressure, and preempt what many in Tehran believe could be a broader U.S. offensive. Okay? This is important. This changes the nature of this conflict from Iran behaving in a purely retaliatory manner to one where they're taking the driver's seat and increasing pressure on America, because this is a strike that requires a response from the United States of America. So what America does now, this is something that Israel does all the time. So we're used to Israel doing this. This is when Israel was striking Lebanon, for example. When the MOU was being conducted, when the MOU was being discussed, Israel would try to do additional strikes in Lebanon in an effort to see what America was willing to let Israel do, in an effort to see what Iran would do in retaliation. This is not a position of weakness, for the record. Iran's constant impulse to demonstrate escalation dominance, this is from Dr. Andreas Krieg, associate professor, saying, Iran's constant impulse to demonstrate escalation dominance isn't a sign of strength, but a deep-seated inferiority complex and trauma on which the Islamic Republic has been built. At this rate, the greatest obstacle to Iranian security isn't Israel or the U.S., it's Iranian sociopsychology. Wrong. That is wrong. Sina responds to that, says, before the war, Iran's relative restraint was cited as proof that it was weak. Now its assertiveness is attributed to inferiority complex. Perhaps it's time to spend less effort psychoanalyzing Tehran and more effort understanding its strategic logic. I think Iran has shown over and over again that it is not impulsive at all. As a matter of fact, its strategic restraint was perhaps born out of naivete. This idea that the moderates or the reformists would be able to negotiate with the United States of America, with the West, with Israel, or at least not with Israel directly, but with America that is supposed to control Israel. The idea that America would treat them as a sovereign nation and not simply a nuisance that they can bomb willingly. This was wrong. The reformists and the moderates were wrong. The hardliners have been proven correct. Okay? And when I say the current reformists, they're not even real reformists. These are still previously people that were known as hardliners like Galabaf, but they're just more pragmatic. So even that is a shift in the direction of the hardliners, because the current governance structure inside of Iran, with the exception of the president and maybe Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, is mostly hardliners that are more pragmatic. So they're willing to negotiate with America at all, but still willing to fight. And the hardliners that don't want to negotiate with America at all and simply just want to fight. So there has been this consolidation of a forceful posture where the hardliners won. Part of the reason why the hardliners, quote unquote, won is because Israel killed all of the reformers. Israel killed all of the people that were always willing to negotiate with the United States of America. Now, the majority, from what I understand, is still in the hands of those who are still hardliners, but not as conservative or as invested in purely fighting. The pragmatists are still technically in control. But the way that the American side has presented this conversation makes it seem as though there is a real crisis in Iranian leadership. They've even gone so far as to lie and claim that the further right, the more right-wing elements within the IRGC have actually won. Right? Arakshi is a reformist. I know. I already brought that up. I said Pezeshkian, Arakshi, those are like the last remaining. Those are like the last remaining reformists. They're not technically hardliners, but the rest, like even Galibov, is a more pragmatic person, but still in the past would have been considered a hardliner. Right wing is an interesting descriptor. Yeah, I don't, it doesn't fall in the same left-right dynamic. One reformist got killed. USA want a change of heart. Anyway, here's what's important. Here's what's important. Regardless of the way that the American side, the way that the Western world has covered this as like real chaos in the leadership structure, I don't think there's as much chaos as the way that we're coping here in the West. They definitely are working hand in glove with one another. The forceful military posture creates leverage for those who seek out negotiations. Okay? In any case, what's important here is why Iran did this first strike, if you want to call it that. It was a non-retaliatory strike. It was an initiated direct strike against U.S. forces in this war for the first time after 150 plus days. The reason why they're doing that is because they are regaining strategic leverage over the nature of this battle. Okay? That's my speculation. I think that they are doing this to say, look, we hold the cards. Now it's up to you. Will you retaliate? Will you continue this battle? Or will you beg us to a ceasefire negotiation process once again? And this is not just my analysis. There are NATO Atlantists like Dennis Citrinowicz at the Atlantic Council who also agree with my assessment. Danny writes in Hebrew, why did Iran fire? A, the current leadership in Iran seeks to dictate the pace of the confrontation and not merely to respond to decisions made in Washington. From its perspective, an offensive initiative is a way to prove that Iran still holds the strategic initiative. That's 100% correct. They're dictating the pace of the battle now. In the past, they were simply responding. They were simply responsive. Tit for tat strikes. Iran maintains its leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. And fires at a boat that's crossing with their transponders off or crossing through the Omani coastline. America comes back in, starts fucking lasering, Iranian ports and whatnot. And then Iran retaliates by striking the Gulf and striking Jordan and striking American military installations. America in that situation is still setting the tempo. Iran is simply retaliating to American strikes. This is different. In Tehran, they identify the American hesitation as a weakness and a lack of willingness to be dragged into a broad war. And there is truth for this. There is truth to this. It's not an accident that there were more leaks about the lack of interceptor stockpiles on the American side this past week. It's not an accident, and it's not random happenstance that Donald Trump claimed he was going to pummel Iran, especially after the Ansar Allah movement also joined in on the battle, closed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, blew up an Aramco facility in Saudi Arabia, and is striking the Yanbu ports, striking at Saudi boats if they dare try to cross the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, effectively shutting off another strait that is that the Saudis were using to transit oil through. This is a huge point of additional leverage, forcing the Saudis to utilize the Suez Canal. And that is if they are even able to get their ships out of the Yanbu ports, which is the only port that they're utilizing. Like one of the most significant port that they need to utilize to get their oil out to sea. When the Ansar Allah is hitting the Yanbu ports, when the Ansar Allah movement is hitting oil refineries inside of Saudi Arabia, Aramco facilities inside of Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden, the theater has grown. There's another front that is opened, and a second strait has closed. America was supposed to respond forcefully to this escalation, and yet they didn't. After 13 days, after ending the memorandum of understanding, for 13 days there were tit-for-tat strikes. But America stopped. This is now the third day of America not delivering a devastating blow that Donald Trump promised. And then the media articles started coming out. Why is Trump not delivering on his promise? Part of that is the pressure from the energy markets. There's only so much financial engineering that you can entertain before there is a hard stop on the strategic petroleum reserves. Okay? There's only so much financial engineering that you can engage in when we're talking about a hard commodity with a global inelastic demand. So you can hide your failure in the stock market by gaming it to the best of your ability with a million different Barack Ravid exclusives. But ultimately, when the belt gets tightened and tightened, when there's not enough oil in the strategic petroleum reserves, and you come near that hard limit of 150 million barrels of oil, where the salt caverns are slated to collapse due to a lack of pressure, you have to do something else. That's one of the major pressures that even Trump has to recognize. Okay? That's one of the major pressures that even Trump has to deal with. Okay? Even he understands this, regardless of how stupid he is. That's one. Number two, the other pressure is the other hard limit. There's only a finite amount of munitions. There's only a finite amount of munitions for standoff munitions that America has been deploying and depleting to strike Iran because they can't utilize their air force efficiently. They haven't developed sufficient air superiority over the Iranian airspace. So they have to use these standoff munitions, Tomahawk missiles that they lob, ATACMS from Kuwait, right? And they also have a finite supply of interceptor missiles, PAC-3s, the Patriot missile systems that they have. And now they've actually started deploying PAC-2s as well, a much older version, a much worse version of the Patriot missile system, which already doesn't have a 100% interception rate regardless. Some of those PAC-3 missiles fail. We've seen one over Bahrain that failed and fell into a residential neighborhood. We don't know how many civilians that killed. Those are the two major reasons as to why Trump has not re-escalated and gone up the escalation ladder against Iran. But they cannot continue to fight. They cannot continue to fight, but they also can't concede. It's a real damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because if they concede, they tuck their tails, the Americans tuck their tails and run, okay, then it's established unambiguously that Iran now controls the Strait of Hormuz, which, 20% of the entire world's energy supply transits through. That's a huge economic advantage that Iran now has. There's a huge political advantage that Iran now has. Iran wins. America loses. So the smart alternative here is, of course, to negotiate with Iran, to beg them back to the ceasefire process, to beg them back to the negotiation process. Iran has already won. We just simply have not acknowledged it yet. And the bleeding will continue until we acknowledge that defeat. So this initiative from Iran to initiate conflict for the first time in the last 150 days is fairly significant. It means that Iran is accelerating the process of American recognition of defeat. It's forcing Americans to come to terms with the reality that they do not have the necessary interceptor supply. They're obviously not going to go beast mode and start striking Israel in this belligerent manner, because their goal is not to engage in revenge. Their goal is still fairly restrained. Their goal is to basically show America their capabilities. That's why they're striking Jordan. That's why they're not striking Israel right now. They're disabling what remains of the anti-air defense systems that exist in Jordan. America obviously had to move a lot of their assets away from the rest of the Gulf because Iran pummeled these American bases in the Gulf to Jordan. Jordan is the last line of defense for Israel. This is also part of the reason why Israel is now defending Jordan. The only other time Israel has ever utilized their own anti-air defense systems was when they sent some anti-air systems to the United Arab Emirates, to a limited degree of success. Don't strike me. No, I'm not. No, they aren't. Yes, they are. Israeli interceptors are being activated over Jordanian airspace to defend the American military bases inside of Jordan. Why would they do that? Why are you so confident that you know what Iran's goals are in this conflict? Because I'm a secret Shia 12er, okay, and a practicer of taqiyya, and a prominent member of the Islamic Republic. I am one of the 88 clerics. I don't know. Maybe I'm confident that I know what Iran's goals are in this conflict because I have a brain and I'm analyzing what they've done so far. I'm looking at their historical patterns. I'm looking at the internal conflict that might exist, the ideological disagreements that might exist within the governance structure of Iran. It's not like they're hiding it. It's the same with China. When people say, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? How do you know what China's going to do? How are you so confident about what China's going to do? Well, they write it down. They write it down all the time. They're pretty open about it. It's like Babe Ruth. They called their shots ahead of time. We don't listen. We don't take it seriously. And then we're shocked when it happens. And the same goes for Iran. The major difference between myself and many other analysts and those in the commentary sphere is that when Iran says something, I listen to what they have to say. If there is a logical through line with what they're saying and what they're doing, if there's a connection between the two, I take note of that and I remember that the next time around. Iran has shown unbelievable restraint, so much so that that level of strategic restraint was seen as a weakness for the longest time. As an Iranian, you are so correct about your analysis of Iran, I can tell you that. Thank you. Early on, in Epic Fury, all of the Western commentariat was confused. They were like, why is Iran striking the Gulf? Those are their neighbors. They're all Muslim. Isn't that stupid? Look at this idiot. Look at this stupid country Iran. What did I say? I said they're hitting American bases. They're striking at missiles that are coming from the Gulf. Of course they're going to do that. Their goal was clear, to shut off America's eyes and ears in the region. They struck at the radar systems. They struck at American military personnel. None of that was a waste. There was a deliberate design to the Iranian retaliation. They were defending themselves and establishing sufficient military deterrence. And I was right. All those other guys were like, oh, you're so dumb. Oh, the Gulf is going to hate Iran forever. The Gulf is going to hate Iran forever. Iran is striking the Gulf, they said. I told you that the message for the Gulf nations was very clear. Get these American bases out. And it turns out I was right. Many in the Gulf want to get these American bases now out. That's part of the reason why America's talking about entertaining putting their entire central command, their entire operational structure inside of Israel now. Here's another version of those events. Hundreds of Jordanian political, legal, and other figures signed an open letter last week calling for the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Jordan in a rare public challenge to the government, which has long cracked down on free speech and dissent. Anecdotally, my experience is that these operations against Iran in defense of Israel are overwhelmingly opposed by the people in Jordan. You have to remember, a lot of these Gulf nations, and also Jordan as well, they're not real democracies. They're not democratic at all. They're run by fucking kings. Jordan is run by a British puppet. So the Jordanian population's attitude towards what's going on, the Jordanian population's attitude towards like being the last line of defense against Israel is not exactly popular by the Jordanians themselves. They don't want that. Same with Bahrain. Same with even the United Arab Emirates, which we, often joke about and say is the most Israeli country. It's the Arab version of Israel. But even amongst the Emirates, the population doesn't want, many people in the population don't want to be the last line of defense for Israel. They don't want to be a missile sponge at the behest of Israel. Why would you want that? So yeah, as Danny was saying, in Tehran, they identify the American hesitation as weakness and a lack of willingness to be dragged into a broad war. The Iranian assessment is that applying additional pressure will precisely test Washington's resolve and influence decision-making in the White House. They want to remind America that they actually hold the cards. They control the tempo. This is a big deal. From Iran's point of view, Danny continues, the naval blockade is no longer just a means of pressure, but an actual declaration of war. Unlike the past, the current leadership is not prepared to accept damage to its freedom of action in the Gulf without a significant response. D, there is a direct connection between today's attacks and the activities of pro-Iranian militias in Iraq against Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. From Tehran's perspective, these are different fronts of the same campaign, whose goal is to reshape the balance of power in the Middle East and erode the status of the United States and its allies. E, this is also further evidence of change in Iran's doctrine following the rise of Khamenei. If in the past the emphasis was mainly on response and deterrence, today Iran is also prepared to initiate offensive moves and to rely deeply on its missile array, drones, and regional proxies. In Tehran, they see an opportunity to reshape the strategic reality in the Gulf to their advantage. The ball is now back in Washington's court. In Iran, they assess that a limited American response will not change the reality. And in the end, the United States will be required to decide whether it escalates the campaign, knowing that every escalation is expected to be met with further Iranian escalation. They're making the American campaign more costly. They're accelerating the process of American recognition of defeat. America's already lost. It's now up to our leaders to come to terms with that reality. So Iran is making it more costly. Iran is agitating with pinpoint accuracy. So it's not even about ballistic missiles being launched from Iran and then successfully striking U.S. targets inside of Jordan. It's the act of launching ballistic missiles alone that is applying pressure, that's changing the tempo, that's giving Iran control over this conflict. Iran is now saying, we are no longer going to hold back and wait for American retaliation, or we're no longer going to hold back and wait for America to strike Iran. We will control the tempo, and we will see how you respond. Bottom line, the attack is further proof that Iran has no intention of surrendering and is not acting out of distress or a desire to beg for negotiations. On the contrary, the leadership in Tehran is prepared to take significant risks because it sees the current confrontation as a decisive battle over its regional status and its ability to shape the security reality in the Middle East. Now, that's important. That's important. It's important to understand. There's also one other element that Danny is not factoring here. This is not simply to reshape the security realities in the region. This is still an existential threat. Because as long as the American-Israeli security partnership remains, as long as Israel still gets to dictate the terms of American military action in the region, there will always be an existential threat to Iran. They have to eradicate it. They have to take out the different tentacles of this American imperialist endeavor in the region. They have to take out the bases. They have to make it as costly for the United States of America to continue operating in the region. And they've been doing that. They've been doing that with their successive strikes on American military installations, on American radar installations. They're creating an environment of pressure for the Gulf nations so that the Gulf nations let up and decide to tell America that this security partnership that America and the Gulf nations have created is not actually helpful for them. Okay? That's one element. The other element is just to directly destroy their supply, to directly destroy the American assets in the region, which they've been doing as well. There's also one other point. What is this? Check out this take from someone at the Atlantic Council. The Iran war has only exacerbated long-standing flaws in the U.S. security approach to the Gulf. It's past time for the U.S. to shed ambiguous security guarantees and embrace a more collaborative approach. What does that collaboration mean? To be more aggressive in our posture and just invade Iran militarily? By the way, 48 seconds remaining on Level 2 Hype Train. The Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the people, for you, the people. If we get to Level 10 Hype Train, we carry the flame, as you guys already know. We haven't gotten to Level 10 Hype Train and carry the flame, even though I have so many new Charlie Kirk AI songs out there that I haven't played in the last week or so. 20 seconds remaining on the Level 2 Hype Train. You can subscribe for $6 or for free. It's the only way to support the show. 10 seconds remaining. Or gift subs. Will we carry the flame, or will the flame perish once again? Boom! Level 3 Hype Train. NB Radicat with the 20 gifted subs. Fox Clown with the 10 gifted subs. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs, will we carry the flame today? Level 4 complete already. You ignored the 10 when you came back. Tamana. Planned attack, thank you for the 5. At level 20, you will get a tank top stream. Level 10, you carry the flame. Level 20, you get a tank top stream. Balls in your court. What Kami says. Thank you for the 20 gifted subs. Lil B Stan, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Say wallahi, wallahi. This is in my local St. Louis news. Deported St. Louis County couple shot dead. Oh, yeah, I know. I'm going to get to that as well. Gray Violet. Zelensky is high. According to CSIS, this would be roughly half of the U.S.'s entire remaining inventory of Patriot interceptors. President Zelensky has asked President Trump for an emergency winter package of 300 Patriot interceptor missiles, Axios reports. Zelensky said Ukraine's stocks are nearly exhausted and warned Russia's strikes could leave millions without heat this winter. The math doesn't add up. Air defense doctrine requires at least 2 interceptors for each incoming projectile. 3 to 5 attacks per month at 30 to 40 missiles per attack is 180 to 400 interceptors needed per month. Russian attacks will certainly increase in frequency and size during the lead up to winter. Mr. President. PMY Gurumi. It's socialism or barbarism. Level 7 Hype Train, ladies and gentlemen. PMY Gurumi. PWNY Gurumi. Thank you for the 25 gifted subs. At level 25, you'll call Trump? No. We're not doing that. We got to go way higher than level 25 for me to call Trump. Let's be real. Level 25, I'll do a workout stream. Fuck it. Why not? Kawuki, the smoking pun. That timeline doesn't work. Zelensky said we need the Patriots yesterday. He's seeking 300 of them by winter. He said Trump promised he would try to help, but also made it clear it's difficult because of the need for interceptors in the war with Iran. Yeah. It's just ironic that he's asking for additional interceptors while simultaneously expanding the theater of conflict in Iran and only continuing the Iranian battle further. As I said yesterday, the more the Iranian war continues, the less likely it is that you are receiving interceptors, Zelensky. This is why I said it's dumb. This is why I said it's fucking stupid to try to strike Iranian tankers or Iranian ships, commercial ships in the Caspian Sea, to try to make yourself more useful to an insane person like Donald Trump. it made a lot more sense for you to say, look, we are very capable of defending against drone strikes, far better than the Gulf nations. We will give you our expertise. That was smart. Trump obviously didn't give a shit about the smart move, the smart initiative from Zelensky to make himself more reliable, more valuable to the American side. And instead, he did the dumb thing. Yeah. U.S.-owned LNG carrier was hit by a drone at the Egyptian port of Damietta in the Mediterranean Sea, possibly Energos Winter, operated by Wilhelmsen Ship Management Limited USA, that have left the port following the reported attack and is now anchored off the coast. Tell me again about how pipeline circumventing the Strait of Hormuz will mean game over for Iran. Yeah. They have the reach. They have the reach, and this is why the other side, like the other axis of resistance militias, are also an important part of the Iranian security package, the Iranian security assurances. This is how they change the security environment in the region to their benefit. Okay, we're almost done with level 8 on the hype train, ladies and gentlemen. Almost done at level 8 on the hype train. Do we carry the flame or not? From the Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean, the conflict is expanding. Such is the regional war Trump mindlessly started in February. If tankers can be struck here, traffic entering from the Red Sea or transiting the canal itself is at risk, especially bad for European energy security. Slowly but surely, they're expanding. Slowly but surely, they're increasing the pressure. This will make it far more costly for America, whose primary goal here as the hegemonic superpower is to make sure that people can fucking trade with ease. America, remember, doesn't just have the ambition of like destroying Iran. America obviously also has additional roles to play. One of the most important roles that America has as the hegemonic superpower is to allow free commerce, free flow of trade, is to assure that security for the rest of the world. Otherwise, your military might means nothing. And if you can't achieve that, through a military campaign, you have to achieve that through negotiations. Yeah, I too remember when Macron said, we can do amazing things in Iran. I remember that. It turns out those things were not so amazing. All right, we're at level 9 hype train, almost halfway. Ladies and gentlemen, keep up the gifted subs. Phytux reports 2 ballistic missiles out of Yazd, Iran, destination unknown. Isn't our dollar basically backed by the idea of us guaranteeing free-flowing trade? To a certain degree, yes. It's backed by the confidence that people have in America maintaining global stability with its superior military. Okay? All of this entire back and forth battle, diminishing stockpiles, America not following through on their security promises to all these countries in the region. All of this actually has destroyed the confidence that people have in America remaining the hegemonic superpower. If America can't protect the petrodollar, what can it protect? Bonzer Barry says, the first step is accepting the Strait of Hormuz is lost. European allies are refusing to support a U.S. push to create a joint Strait of Hormuz patrol until they see an enduring ceasefire in the Iran war. The latest sign that Washington's repeated bashing of its closest friends has carried consequences. No, I don't think they're puppies, okay? European leaders are servile dogs. They would willingly follow Trump, regardless of the way Trump talks about them or talks to them. The reason why they're not doing this is because they understand the situation. They understand the dynamic. They understand that there is no benefit to sending naval assets to the Strait of Hormuz when America can't even guarantee trade security to the oil tankers, to the the shipments that are trying to transit the Strait of Hormuz, while Iran is still clearly peppering those ships with drones. The 30-year Treasury yield, which moves with inflation expectations, jumped to 5.21%, the highest level since mid-2007. We've officially reached level 10. What did I say I was going to do at level 15? Oh, a tank top stream. If we reach level 15 on the hype train, I will do a tank top stream again. I'll bring it back. Yeah, I'm not above slutting myself out. But promises made, promises kept. Biker Boiler Room set, where I only play We Are Charlie Kirk remixes with a tank top at level 15. Oh my God, it's still going. Not Boiler Room. They're super problematic. Is so funny. We just literally watched an Agartha hardstyle remix of Charlie Kirk. I think problematic is out the door at this point. Okay. I'm just trying to win over the Asmongold audience, the fucking Nederlanders, okay? The people, the Dutch, the people living in Holland, the people living in Norway who are like, oh, maybe this guy isn't so bad. He likes the hard style. I love hard style. Maybe socialism isn't so bad. I also like carrying the flame. Why do you lie to your fans in here? About what? Gaming? Hot off the presses? No! That's crazy. Coworker Wig to coworker Kirk. Charlie's looking up at this right now. Wow, we are, thank you, Burley. Level 11 hype train. Thank you, Burley. In half an hour, I will be talking to Trita Parsi about the situation. We will be monitoring the situation together. Anyway.
Violent clashes in the Middle East and concerns that the pause in the fighting between the U.S. and
I gotta
Iran
pee.
is over. American and Saudi forces say they launched precision strikes against militias backed by Iran, and Tehran fired ballistic missiles toward American forces. U.S. commanders call it an attempted surprise attack. Charlie D'Agata is in Jordan with the very latest. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Vlad. 4 days of relative calm was shattered overnight with those two dramatic developments, that surprise attack aimed at U.S. forces and new U.S. airstrikes in a joint operation with Saudi Arabia for the first time. This might seem like, well, here we go again, but this is a serious escalation. So video shows attacks on Iranian-backed militias in Iraq in direct retaliation for drone strikes aimed at Saudi Arabian oil facilities. An Iraqi paramilitary coalition says the strikes killed and wounded multiple people and caused damage to buildings and other property. Then there's this surprise ballistic missile attack here in Jordan. Military sources tell us 5 of those missiles were intercepted. Remember, this is where those 3 U.S. soldiers were killed. So this isn't symbolic. This isn't a gesture, U.S. Central Command told us. This was another attempt to kill American troops. So fighting had been on hold to give diplomacy a chance. Now, in the middle of all of this volatility, President Trump met privately with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time since this war began. Netanyahu described it as one of the best conversations, but earlier President Trump slammed the Prime Minister for exaggerating Iran's nuclear threat, saying, quote, I don't
Level
need
12
Bibi
hype
to
train.
tell me that
3 more
because
levels.
he wants me to stay involved. Natalie?
Charlie D'Agata in Jordan, thank you so much.
President Trump speaking to Fox just moments ago about the U.S.-Iran conflict. Trey Ying
Yeah,
says
he
the
mad. He
information-
big mad.
Trey, what did the president tell you?
This was really funny. He's like, we're going to bomb the fucking shit out of them. We're so mad.
Yeah, guys, good morning. President Trump reacting to that Iranian attack on U.S. forces overnight in Jordan. President Trump tells Fox News about Iran, we are going to beat the effing S out of them. He went on to say, we'll be hitting them hard. They're going to get a beating. So clearly the United States is going to respond to what the president described as a surprise attack. He says U.S. forces had just minutes to shoot down these incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. The president says he has reviewed video of the shoot down and it was U.S. forces conducting this operation to defend that area. He said it was real time. They were calling out coordinates and ensuring that none of this incoming Iranian fire got through. I also asked the president about those U.S. and Saudi airstrikes against Iran-backed Iraqi Shia militias overnight. He says those strikes were coordinated with the Iraqi government. He called these Iran-backed militias a cancer on the world and says he is considering additional warnings against Iranian proxies and their link to the Iranian regime. The president also talked about his meeting yesterday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Oval Office. He says it was a great meeting, adding he understands now. It appears that the relationship...
Bro thinks he's lethal shooter. I understand it now. Bro, you are not lethal shooter, okay? You are not lethal shooter. You don't understand shit.
Between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister is strengthening. And again, the president called that meeting in the Oval great. In terms of possible talks with the Iranian regime, the president says we're going to let them keep
Level
talking.
12 hype train.
Remember, the Iranians came to President Trump after 13 straight days of U.S. bombing against Iran.
1 minute remaining at 30%. Level 12 hype train. It seems like we are capable of carrying the flame, but maybe we are not capable of getting to a tank top stream.
Asking to meet about the Strait of Hormuz and their broader nuclear ambitions. And those talks are taking place as we speak behind the scenes. And then this surprise attack launched against U.S. forces overnight. And again, President Trump telling Fox News we are going to beat the effing S out of them, and that U.S. strikes will take place against Iran in response to the surprise attack overnight against U.S. forces in Jordan. Guys?
What's intriguing, too, is we understand the previous attacks were with Saudi Arabia. You know, this whole thing started with Epic Fury with Israel.
Amy on.
Do you sense that there might be a comprehensive
Cake by the ounce.
plan in place or working on it?
It's
that would
Myanmar.
involve Kuwait, Saudi Arabia,
Butterstains,
UAE,
Mr. Fancy
who
Penguin.
at various times have taken unilateral action on their
What
own.
Kami says
along with the IDF.
with another 20.
It's absolutely possible because the Iranian plan here backfired.
20
By
seconds
attacking
remaining,
all of
almost
these
done with
Gulf
level 12.
countries,
Level
they
12,
built
20
an
seconds
informal
remaining.
coalition that is now targeting Iranian proxies in the region and even Iranian territory. And we saw that last night on display. Saudi Arabia publicly admitting that they are participating in strikes against Iranian proxies in Iraq alongside U.S. forces. And other countries in the...
We made it to level 13 hype train, ladies and gentlemen. I also have an update on this lesser known guy, Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu's standing among Republicans has collapsed by 33 points since May. In May, Netanyahu was plus 47. In June, he was plus 24. And now he is plus 14. Now he's still in the green. But even the fucking cult is breaking with the real American president. And maybe perhaps they want the actual American president, President Donald Trump, to come back into the seat of power. I don't know. Guzzo24, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. We're at level 13 hype train, only 2 more levels remaining for a tank top stream. You denigrated the sanctity of the hype train promises last month. You can't act surprised. I mean, the tank top one is an easy one. Flew to Fox.
Gulf have participated in limited capacity against the Iranians, targeting some of these coastal areas around the city of Bandar Abbas next to the Persian Gulf, where many of those U.S. strikes took place. And remember, when we spoke with President Trump earlier this year during Operation Epic Fury, he said he was most surprised by the fact that the Iranians were targeting these countries that were uninvolved, that were not striking Iran at the time. And so again, what Iran has done here by targeting these Gulf countries is actually building this informal coalition that is now being used to pressure the Iranian regime. The question remains if these talks will lead to some sort of agreement.
4-2.
But again,
Thank you
President
for the
Trump tells Fox News there will be a U.S. response to this surprise attack overnight against U.S. forces in Jordan.
Trey Ying's just getting off the phone with the president. Trey, thank you very much for the exclusive reporting.
Thanks, Trey.
Be sure to like.
It's funny that Trey Ying's is like the last remaining Trump loyalist at this point, which is a definite fall from grace for Trey. He was far more critical of Israel back in the day before they made him the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. Tel Aviv Trey is now the biggest Trump dick writer at Fox News. That's part of the reason why Trump loves giving him interviews where he says dumb shit like, oh, I'm going to bully the fuck out of Iran. Updates. CENTCOM commander in an internal note, this is from Phil Stewart, chief national security reporter for Reuters, with a fat scoop. This comes after the footage was filmed by a U.S. soldier during an Iranian missile barrage targeting the Muwafaq Salti air base in Jordan. CENTCOM commander in an internal note says videos like this by troops can help Iran with targeting during missile and drone attacks. Comes as sources tell Reuters some deployed personnel could soon be ordered to surrender their phones. Now, it's funny because this is a successful strike. And clearly, if they are capable of targeting whatever they were targeting there, visual confirmation from phone footage like this, it's not going to change the dynamic for Iran because, one, they're capable of precise targeting now. And two, if they're capable of precise targeting, they're probably capable of seeing the impact zone with the same satellite imagery that allowed them to engage in precise targeting. So it's still funny that they are, engaging in more operational security, though. Too little, too late. Cooper says Iran benefits from being able to see the success or failure of its strikes in near real time by searching news reports or online posts by journalists referencing reactions, photos, and footage from the cell phones of our troops. The direct, unavoidable cost of this open source intelligence could be measured in the lives of American service members and civilian residents in targeted Gulf countries. Cooper also says Iran would normally have a tough time determining the success or failure of its strikes thanks to things like the U.S. military's electronic jamming or other tactics used in war zones. Tamanna! Thank you for the 50. Almost done. 10 seconds remaining on level 13. 10 seconds remaining on level 13. 9 seconds remaining. 88%. Oh my God. With a last-ditch effort from Blonde Bob and Dijo Kajula with the 50 bones. We are now at level 14, only one level away from a tank top stream. Promises made, promises kept. Promises made, promises kept. The only way to fight back against cooter maxing is by gun maxing. Just watch this real quick to hype everyone up. Look at this guy shamelessly engaging in self-promotion. An anonymous user. Holy fuck. Amy Leon, thank you for the 50 gifted. Killer Diller, Moswin. We are at 76% at level 14. 76% at level 14, ladies and gentlemen. 79% at level 14. Tank top stream is imminent. Give us your best Sav Cannon pose. Tank top suit, make it happen. No, I'm not. Tamanna, Blonde Bob, another anonymous gifter. Butterfan. Oh my God, we did it. Level 14. Level 14. Tank top streams are back. Tank top streams are back. Hassan Piker promises oiled up chest, armpit, and feet stream at level 15 hype train. That's not what I promised. I just said tank top. You are arriving at ridiculous conclusions. Okay? You're arriving at, that is an exaggeration that was never promised. Okay? That was never promised. Wear this instead. No. Level 15. Level 15 hype train. We arrived at it. We're going to do a tank top. Promise is made. I will keep that promise. Open your purses. 10 more levels for a workout stream. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I don't think we're going to get to level 25, but I will do a workout stream as well if we get to level 25. Bro, oil stream for the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, oil up with the oil transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. Tank top stream with Norm. No, I'm not going to wear a tank top when I'm interviewing Norm Finkelstein after years and years You're out of your dang mind. Yeah, Ken Klippenstein interviewed Francesca Hong, by the way, who had some beast mode opinions. We're going to get to that in a second. But how much of a surprise was Iran's surprise attack? Iranian war briefing with Sean Bell.
152 of President Trump's 4 to 6 week war in Iran. After a relatively quiet few days, last night was intense military activity again. But what was the surprise about Iran's surprise attack? Overnight last night, we heard that 3 oil tankers were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. It looks like they were passing in the southern route, which is very close to the Omani coastline, supported by American ships and in direct contravention of the clear route by Iran, which is operating up to the north. Now, every time that's happened in the past, that's acted as the catalyst for a tit-for-tat exchange between America and Iran. That's exactly what happened last night. As a result of that, America attacked a series of military targets around the Strait of Hormuz, deliberately designed to try to reduce Iran's ability to strike back and to strike commercial shipping. Meanwhile, the Iranians, in response to those attacks, therefore targeted the region, went across and targeted American forces in Jordan with a series of ballistic missile strikes. Now, Central Command have said that all of those ballistic missiles were intercepted. The challenge, of course, is that what's actually happening here is that there's a regional conflict that's expanding well beyond the boundaries of Iran. There are a number of Iranian-backed militia groups operating in Iraq. Some of them have been attacking American facilities and Saudi Arabian oil facilities. There have been 30 drone attacks in the last 72 hours. Central Command announced that there have been a number of attacks
Level 15 at 1 minute
into Iraq,
remaining.
targeting military facilities there.
Level 15 at 1 minute remaining. Level 15 at 1 minute remaining. 1 minute warning for level 15. If we get to 25, I will do a workout stream. I'll try to do it with Abdul. I don't know if we'll have time, but an anonymous gifter is gifting 500 tier 500. Holy fuck. We got a horny ass anonymous gifter, level 15 complete. What the fuck? Almost level 16 complete. Jesus Christ. There is a gooner amongst our ranks. We got Oilers back in the fold. Moose Knuckle stream at level 20. No, I'm not going to do a Moose Knuckle stream, dude. Lindsey Graham gifting from the grave. Okay, maybe we will reach level 25. I was wrong. I was wrong about this. Kaisenak could never.
The Iraqis claim that 20 people were killed and 32 were injured. On behalf of the Crown Prince, the Saudi foreign minister said they didn't want to see any form of escalation in the region, but they would act in response to any form of aggression in those most recent periods of attack. So why has there been a sudden resumption in these attacks? Well, last night it's quite difficult to see who struck who first and the sequencing of events. But America is saying that Iran had conducted a surprise attack against America, made implied that actually Iran was operating proactively. But the challenge is this is all about the Strait of Hormuz. It's all about control. It's all about the Memorandum of Understanding and Clause 5, which effectively gave Iran responsibility for the safe passage of vessels through those straits. Every time America tries to force commercial vessels through that new southern route, it precipitates an escalation of violence, and that continues. So what actually is the American strategy here? Well, it seems to be able to use American force to try and defeat Iran, trying to drive it to the negotiating table and a position of weakness. The challenge is, as day 152, that doesn't appear to be working.
I like that Sky News has to repeat the same video every day now. I mean, that's everyone. I feel like I'm always, I try to make it as interesting as possible, but it's impossible not to be repetitive on this because it's the same song and dance every time. Friday night, Trump says, after market close, Trump says he's going to do something insane. He's going to nuke Iran. And then come Sunday night, right before markets open, Trump says, oh, Iran is begging for a ceasefire. This has happened for the last 160 fucking days. Literally, with a brief pause in between when there was a MOU, which they were forced to follow through on because there was an imminent crisis with the strategic petroleum reserves. Fuck a tank top, post, meat, coward. Okay, chill. Level 16 hype train, 1 minute remaining. Level 16 hype train at 92%. Level 16 hype train, we're about to hit level 17 hype train with 1 minute remaining. When will you interview Norm? We'll take leave from work. Okay, that's insane, Miss Pickles. You shouldn't take leave from work just to listen to me interview Norm. But it's tomorrow. Level 16, level 17 hype train. Tank top stream with Norm Finkelstein? No, I'm not going to do a tank top stream with Norm Finkelstein. I will do it on the weekend, which is when I will be in Michigan. I'll bring in a fucking tank top to Michigan.
While what's happening, what's the Iranian strategy here? Well, the Iranian people are definitely suffering as a result of this war. Inflation is high, supplies are low, but the Iranian leadership, particularly the IRGC, see this as a once-in-a-generational opportunity to move from a pariah state to a regional power, potentially even in control of the Strait of Hormuz. All they've got to do to achieve their strategic objectives is to outlast America, and they will deliver strategic success. So, of course, where does this leave us in the whole process? Well, when President Trump first started this war, he announced it would be a 4 to 6 week war, and the much anticipated and crucial midterm elections in America were many, many months away. However, we're now day 152 of the war. There's less than 100 days left before those elections. Crucially, America does not like this war in Iran. President Trump's personal popularity has dropped. This is not the legacy that either President Trump or the Republican Party would have anticipated.
You know, nobody was able to bring people together quite like my...
Defiant Netanyahu promised to go to New York after Mamdani threats. Yes, the real president went to Sean Hannity, by the way. Here's, before we get to that, last part of the situation monitoring. Hardest part of 3-day war was the first 5 years. What the fuck is this? Using experimental quantum lip reading AI classified DARPA. Here's exactly what he said. Okay, dude, come on. Come on. Crazy a foreign PM can do this. A foreign PM warns the United States that he has deployed armed forces on his soil to act against his law, and against his law is police and army. Netanyahu says Israel has special forces ready if arrested. Vows New York City visit. Yeah, I don't know if he realizes what that sounds like. I don't know if he realizes what that means. I mean, that's insane. That's an insane statement. But I guess it's fucking beast mode. We're at level 17 hype train with 2 minutes remaining. 2 minutes remaining. AIPAC Super PAC adds $5 million to Michigan Senate primary, pushing total above $30 million. You know what I have to say to that?
What gives?
But of course, AIPAC is doing that for a good reason, because
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
Yep. Mamdani is now formally a part of Netanyahu's digital campaign and tough re-election bid. Here's what I wrote last week. Confrontation with New York's outspoken anti-Zionist mayor could allow Netanyahu to cast himself once again as Israel's defender against international efforts to isolate and punish the country. I don't think so. I mean, good luck. Good luck to Bibi on that. It's not going to work, I don't think. Prove the old man wrong, get to level 25. I don't think we can get to level 25. We're at 1 minute remaining. Or less than 1 minute remaining. 1 minute remaining at 11% at level 17. I don't think we're getting past the level 17 chatters. I just got out of a work meeting. Are you still doing tank top stream at level 20? No, I said I was going to do a tank top stream already and at 15, and we passed 15. I said I would do a workout stream at 25, but we're not getting there. It's not happening. My PBS prediction is that within a year, Hasanabi will build travel Pelican to include some kind of soundboard. Probably not, because the Pelican is super tight right now as it is. It's like it's filled to the brim. So I would have to get like a larger Pelican, which would not be carry-on sized. So I'm not going to do that most likely. I mean, I guess maybe, probably not. Level 17 show hole. No, that's not happening. All right. New estimates of American PAC-3 and THAAD anti-ballistic missile interceptor stockpiles in American inventory from the CSIS. Roughly a third of pre-war Patriot interceptors are estimated to remain. This is not good. Patriot and THAAD interceptors remaining in U.S. inventory pre-war was 2,330. At the ceasefire point was 1,030. Today, July 27th, it's at 759 to 827. THAAD pre-war was 452. At ceasefire was at 232 to 262. Today is at 234 to 278. Estimated inventories today account for additional interceptor use and new deliveries since the April 8th ceasefire. THAAD deliveries during the ceasefire outpaced estimated use over the same period, resulting in higher inventories today than in April. Patriot calculations include the latest MSE variant and Pack 3s. Several hundred Pack 2s not represented in the chart are estimated to remain in U.S. inventory, which once again means Ukraine is not getting any fucking Patriot missiles. That's what it means. Oh, hype train over. That's what that means. How the fuck is Ukraine receiving any Pack 3 Patriot missiles that they are demanding from the American side to the tune of 300 as Zelensky demanded today? If America continues its war with Iran, why would Ukraine try to enter the Iranian theater, only extending the Iranian conflict if they were successful, right? When all of those fucking Patriot missiles are being utilized in the Gulf, mostly in Israel. As we've been reporting since April, the stockpile issue at this stage is one that largely centers around concerns the U.S. military may not have enough munitions for the next conflict. Analysts and sources have consistently warned that continued fighting with Iran could deplete stockpiles to the point it could impact the U.S. military's ability to fight with China or even North Korea in the future. It's actually worse than that. I don't think it's just for potential conflict with China or Russia. I think it's worse than that. I think they don't have enough for this conflict. That's the real secret. The real secret is not that, oh, we won't have enough for China. It's not like we're going to fucking wage a war with China. That's insane. If you think tomorrow China decides, fuck it, we're going beast mode, we're going to militarily invade Taiwan, if you think America is going to then shift their priority to defend Taiwan, you are the most delusional person on the planet. Yeah, Ukraine is trying to make it seem to Trump that supporting Ukraine is part of fighting against Iran. It's a game of jingling keys to keep Trump's attention. I know, but it's a very dumb thing to do because if successful, it only extends the conflict, which makes it less likely that he will receive a single Patriot missile. That's what I'm saying. Any day that goes by where America is more invested in Israel, which is what America will always do, Israel's the primary focus, is a day where Ukraine gets no attention whatsoever and no weapons whatsoever. You're telling me this doesn't make you want to defend Israel? Yes, for the boomer cons, it does. I'm turned up and turned on. The dogs are out. OBGYN stanced up. Cooter for the rest of the world to see. This makes me say,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
Straight up. Anyway, on that note, Trita Parsi is going to be on the broadcast in 1 minute. I don't think he's here yet, but he will be on in 1 minute. I'm going to text him real quick, see if he's still doing it. Ask Trita about this. What is it? Okay, Trita is here. Hello, Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of Quincy Institute, is in the building, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on, let me change the... There it is.
How you doing?
Okay, welcome back. Apologies for yesterday. We had to watch perhaps the most boring Wisconsin gubernatorial debate that's taking place, but we got a candidate in there, Francesca Hong. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a wonderful DSA candidate, running and actually killing it right now. She's got like 44%. Wow. It's freaking out the establishment a lot. But in any case, Shrita, you're back, and the news are not so good. And I am very excited to have you. Thank you for coming on. Yeah, we got a real situation evolving. As of yesterday, Iran actually changed the pace of the theater by doing a non-retaliatory strike for the first time in the last 160 plus days by striking at U.S. assets in the Jordanian air bases, the U.S. air bases in Jordan. And Trump has since refused to retaliate, as a matter of fact. So very interesting predicament. I wanted to hear your assessment on where things are going and if you still feel confident that there is any opportunity for peace.
Look, there always is opportunity still for peace, I think. Although I agree with you fully, it is looking very, very bad. The trajectory has shifted dramatically. Let me start off by sharing just my thought and analysis as to why I think the Iranians did this. I think this really surprised the US. They did not expect this. And it was, from the US perspective, highly provocative to do it while Netanyahu and Zelensky are in Washington, D.C. It adds additional pressure onto Trump. So the fact that the US hasn't responded yet, and I'm not 100% sure if that is the case. There was some sort of attack early on, I heard. But either way, I don't find that very likely to be a lasting situation. So why did the Iranians then do this? There's been a lot of speculation that this is because they lost faith in diplomacy with the United States. They're trying to test to see how strong Trump's resolve is, all of these different things. And I think there are probably elements of truth in that. But the way I see it, I would limit it to essentially three key reasons. First one is oil prices have come down. Despite the fact that the strait is closed, even during this informal ceasefire, oil prices has come down, which then creates a problem for the Iranians because there was never a negotiated ceasefire. It's just that the US stopped fighting. The US has stopped bombing. And if it is so that the US can decide when there's a ceasefire and when there isn't one by simply bombing or not bombing, and the Iranians just have to follow suit, then that creates a scenario in which Trump will always have an option, a rather costless option, in which he can just go from diplomacy to fighting back to ceasefire, and the Iranians would just have to adjust to that. So an informal ceasefire is completely unacceptable to the Iranians, but particularly now when they saw that oil prices were coming down, it meant that the economic pressure on Trump was reducing much faster than the Iranians thought. I don't think this is the main reason. The second reason is, I think the Iranians wanted to showcase that they are willing to take preemptive actions against the United States because they believe the US was preparing an attack. They claim that there was intelligence and maneuvers in the US with new assets coming to the region that suggested that the US was in the direction of an attack. And by taking preemptive measures, they're trying to signal to the United States that if you think that there's like a massive escalatory step that you can take, a larger war, you hear Trump constantly say that, we're just going to go at Iran much harder than we did before. So if there is a belief that a bigger war is in your favor, the Iranians are trying to deter the US, and I know this may sound paradoxical, by showing their willingness to attack first. Now, of course, there's a huge risk with that at the end, and we'll talk about that. And the third thing, I think, is the combination of a couple of factors here, which really puts a fine print on this. I think the Iranians have come to the conclusion that Trump will never commit himself to diplomacy unless he no longer has a military option. And by showing their willingness to go to war with the US, by preemptively attack the US, they're trying to tell him, you don't have that option because you think that that option is going to be easy for you, but we're willing to fight you. And only when Trump has concluded that he doesn't have a military option will he start becoming sincere and genuine about diplomacy. So the pathway to a deal is not, or to peace, is not a deal. The pathway to it is to first eliminate the military option, force a realization that only diplomacy, meaning no combination of diplomacy and military action, will work. And then at that point, you can actually make a deal feasible and you can make a deal durable. 1 second, let me just pick up this. I think this is the second time this has happened while I'm on your show.
I was going to ask if you could fix your audio source as well.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's coming from your headphones right now. It's a little bit low. Potentially.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Okay, it should be better now. Is it better?
Yes, it's much better now. Yeah, much louder.
I'm going to get a professional mic one of these days.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So yeah, I agree with I agree with your assessment. What do you think this says about the American conversations that have been taking place in Western media, specifically about the quote unquote chaos within the Iranian governance structure? The New York Times Daily actually had this long report that I found to be coping, I guess, with the situation a little bit by claiming that there is a real disagreement between the hardliners and the more moderate, more pragmatic elements. The more pragmatic elements that are trying to still maintain a more positive posture towards a ceasefire negotiation, whereas the hardliners are maybe even acting out at times. There was talk about how the IRGC might have actually even decided on their own to strike the U.S. assets in the region or strike at the ships to abide by the MOU. I don't think that's correct, but does this change that calculation? Does it make it impossible to determine that there is any kind of inconsistency, any kind of chaos or conflict inside of the Iranian governance structure right now?
Look, I think we have very little insight into what's happening inside the Iranian government. But I do think that there seems to be some sort of a inclination to assume that because we don't understand it. And we're very quick to go to those type of explanations. And again, sometimes they're probably true, but it doesn't mean that there's some sort of inherent problem. I find it peculiar that we're so quick to come to that conclusion when there's such clear signs that there's massive chaos in the American government.
I was about to say, Iran didn't fire 12 generals, I don't think. Iran doesn't have leakers going to mainstream news and sidestepping the security meetings that they're having right now to basically advance the warning signs that we're running out of interceptors.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have a situation there in which they have like an intelligence service that leaks that type of information that completely contradicts what the government is saying, etc. Now, some of that is normal, but we are in a truly chaotic situation these days with the manner that this current administration is running things. But I do think like there is a reality one has to recognize, and it shouldn't be surprising. This is why I think some of these reportings are a little bit odd. Why are you surprised that in a situation of war, it is the IRGC that has the upper hand? It is the generals that in a state of war actually tend to have the strongest voices, not the diplomats. Or the idea that, so for instance, there were negotiations about 2-3 weeks ago before you had a full collapse of the MOU. And it was in Muscat. The American side actually didn't really show up. So it was done by the Omanis and the Iranians. And the Iranian foreign minister essentially was negotiating a text, a joint statement by the Omanis. He seemed to have thought that he had the mandate for it, went back to Tehran by phone and got it nixed. And, apparently he couldn't sell it to Tehran. And then the question is, well, how could they overrule the foreign minister? Of course they overrule the foreign minister. The foreign minister doesn't make these decisions at the end of the day. You had a similar situation in which Kushner and Witkoff were in Geneva, negotiated a deal with Iranians through the help of the Omanis back in February. And even told the Iranians that they are very confident that Trump is going to like this deal, went back and Trump said no, and instead started a war 24 hours later.
Perfidy.
No one said that, how is it possible that Witkoff could be overruled? Of course he can be overruled. He's not the president. And currently the situation in Iran is not that the foreign minister is running the foreign policy. It is the government as a whole, and within that government, clearly the IRGC and the military are having the upper hand because they're at war.
Yeah, the Supreme Leader Trump has the final say on these decisions, and perhaps there's someone even above him that is capable of changing his mind. And that man is Benjamin Netanyahu, and he's currently in Washington, D.C. I wanted to hear what your perspective is. Like, obviously, there is this real crisis. CSIS has reported that the standoff munition stockpile has diminished dramatically. The interceptor stockpiles have diminished dramatically, where the current assessment is that we do not have enough interceptors, PAC-3s, and THAAD missiles to potentially wage any war with our peer or near peer adversaries. I think it's worse than that. I suspect that it's actually not about a potential crisis in the future, but the real crisis that's taking place in the Gulf right now. I don't think we have enough to even go through a long and extended conflict with Iran. So now there's 2 points of pressure. The markets, obviously, being the first point of pressure, the energy markets, and the munitions. And It seems to me like that is the real reason why Trump has not gone through an additional escalation, and instead is demonstrating some semblance of restraint. Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is capable of convincing him otherwise, especially when reporting shows that he's frustrated with the Pickaxe Mountain targeting that obviously came from the Israeli side as another opportunity, a lifeline to continue striking Iran, to give Trump and the Western media another target that Trump could focus on?
Yeah, look, first of all, regarding the interceptors, it's precisely because of that, because these are not mysteries. I mean, these numbers in this, the audit of it was very clear from the outset. So the only way going back to war really could work was if it was a new plan with some new intelligence and some new ability, capacity, some new tactic strategy that would ensure a victory in very short order. Because if it was dragging out, then yes, this problem with the interceptors would very quickly rear its head. And this is part of the reason I'm so surprised as to why Trump really restarted this, because I expected that if he's actually going to restart this war, he must have a plan. He must have a new technology. He must have a new intel. And it appears that he had absolutely none of them. And instead, some haphazard bombings in the south of Iran eventually would have brought about some new situation. Right? So it's still a mystery to me how this decision actually was made, because there's not even a semblance of some sort of a strategy or theory of change, theory of how this could succeed. So the interceptor problem has always been available. It's always been known. We saw it back in 2025, in which the Israelis started asking for a ceasefire after 9 days or 10 days of fighting because they were running low. 10 days. And that was when the US was providing a tremendous amount of support for them as well. So it's not a new problem in any way, shape, or form. Is it the reason why he's showing restraint? In many ways, I think it is. The question is, why wasn't that same factor present to make him decide not to do this in the first place?
Maybe it's because
Perhaps
the military is less woke this time around, even less woke than before. Because pre-MOU, Pete Hegseth said they're going to start, being less woke. And maybe post MOU, they're going to be even less woke than the past. Have you factored in the secret weapon?
Yeah, I think there is an argument to be made that the president was so frustrated for a variety of reasons that he was just, screw this diplomacy. I want to see a bombing campaign. And you didn't have people in the military or around him that were willing to say, look, understand your anger, but this is not going to work. That Trump was simply not receptive to that. And he wouldn't be until he had proven to himself that this won't work, which happened about 7 to 8 days into this war. Yeah. And as a result, now he's more susceptible to that article, which then comes to your other question, which is, can Netanyahu nevertheless shift it around? I think there is one thing that the Israelis likely tried yesterday, and I think Netanyahu hinted at it publicly by saying that they came in with some new ideas.
Oh, God.
And I think what this may suggest is that the U.S. military itself is not coming up with any more ideas at this point, because none of them are good, and they know that this is not going to go anywhere. So they're not going to put bad options in front of Trump. But that means that there is a bit of a vacuum there when it comes to military ideas, and Trump has probably rejected a lot of them. And the Israelis may come up with another one of these spectacular ideas that look good on paper or look good in Trump's eyes, but have no relationship with reality, just as much as their previous idea, which is starting this entire war in the first place, had a very, very bizarre relationship with reality.
As far as new ideas goes, I mean, the old idea is obviously the last remaining step on the escalation ladder from the American side, which is a ground invasion of the coastal islands and maybe even the Iranian coast. Now, of course, this is a spectacular failure that's imminent, a lot of military casualties. Trump's also very reluctant to go the full distance and actually put boots on the ground. He has consistently refused to do so in the past. So is there any chance that the administration tries to fight their way out of this, by your estimation, considering that It is kind of the last remaining option because we've been doing the same thing over and over again. It's very clear that an aerial bombardment campaign is not going to create regime change at all. And America's not even gaining sufficient leverage over Iran in the process. And every day that this continues, Iran is actually gaining additional leverage over the oil markets.
So I wouldn't even concede the idea that this is an option unless Trump, the people around him, and the military are willing to accept thousands of American casualties and killed, because that is what this would be. And they know that. They know that already back in the first round of this war, in which they looked at those options and ultimately decided not to do it. So again, if you were to do it, either it's because you're completely desperate, or because you have some new strategy, some new intel, some new capability that changes the equation, because it has been looked upon numerous times and it doesn't look good in any way, shape, or form. Can you take an island? Yes. Can you keep it? Yes. What is the cost of that? Immense. What is the strategic utility of it? Very limited. Does it change the picture? No. You're just positioning yourself in a stationary way that allows the Iranians to rain missiles on you, and you cannot force protect. You can't provide force protection for the troops under those circumstances in an effective manner. So it would be a lot of people killed for absolutely nothing. That was the reality in the first round. I don't see anything that suggests that that is not the reality today. If the belief is that this bombing of southern Iran has reduced Iran's ability to close the strait, remember, this is exactly what was tried with the Houthis in February of 2025.
Yeah.
When Waltz and others convinced Trump to do that. And after 9 weeks, he stopped, and I don't think he's even mentioned the word Yemen since then.
Yeah, no, he said famously, the Houthis got hands. Like, he literally said they're brave fighters. They're really tough fighters.
Exactly. And I spoke to folks at the Pentagon at the time who were saying that, they were stunned by how quickly the Houthis immediately dug up missiles, fixed the different silos or, entry points in which the missiles were. And the Iranians are doing exactly the same thing. And, at the end of the day, it's probably the Iranians that trained the Houthis on this. So if it didn't work against the Houthis that are far less dug in, far less resources, have not had this strategy for that long, whereas the Iranians have been preparing for this since the mid-1990s, I just don't buy for a second that this 13-day campaign has achieved more against the Iranians than what 9 weeks did against the Houthis.
What level of knowledge do we have over the Houthi ballistic munitions and drone procurement capabilities? Because from what I understand, they are still significantly reliant on trying to create an air bridge between Iran, and this is part of the puzzle for them. We don't know what. Do we even know what depth of stockpiles they have in terms of carrying out a continuous blockade over an extended period of time? Because I assume that their reluctance to enter the theater of conflict and close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait wasn't necessarily because they're a totally sovereign actor here, but more so because of the limitations that they acknowledge. But perhaps I'm wrong, and I wanted to know if you have additional information on that.
I don't have an answer to that. My suspicion would be, however, that first of all, they were made self-sufficient far earlier, meaning that they know how to build this stuff on their own now. In fact, I was told that they had even improved on some of the drones and were now reversing that, essentially the intelligence or technological flow was going from the Houthis to the Iranians.
Yeah, we saw that. Sorry to cut you off, but we saw that with the F-35. They were the ones who first used the loitering drones against the F-35 and almost successfully struck an F-35, which was shocking when it was revealed in the New York Times. I thought it was fake. So they definitely have improved. I just don't know how deep their facilities are, both literally deep as far as like bunkered down, but also like how many munitions they have.
Yeah. Again, and I don't have the answer to that, but my suspicion would be is that they were never in a position in which that had been depleted by the time the Saudi-Iranian normalization occurred. They have the technology. Remember they're importing this stuff in small parts rather than as whole. And as a result, I think it would be rather safe to say that they certainly have the capacity to carry this on for some time. How long, I don't know. But I think we should also recognize that there seems to be a connection now in which any manner in which a conflict between Saudi and Yemen would become full blown would also then entail a conflict between the Iraqi militias in Iraq and Yemen and Saudi Arabia, which then also changes the equation somewhat.
And I think that we're there right now, right? I mean, that's what it seems to be happening currently, because on the other side, while America has not retaliated against Iran directly, there was a joint U.S.-Saudi strike that took place against Iraq, the Iraqi militias. What does that say about the theater of conflict expanding?
Well, I think this was most likely a warning to essentially suggest that if the Saudis go in that direction, it will not just be with the Houthis, it will also be with the Iraqi militias. And by the way, there were elements of that before as well, in which some of the attacks on Saudi Arabia actually came from the north, from Iraq rather than from Yemen itself. Now, are we fully there? No, we're not fully there, but I think we are inching there. I think they're showcasing their capability, and the Saudis and the US are showcasing what they're capable and willing to do in return. And we saw with that strike, I think there were about 20 people killed, including 5 IRGC officers in Iraq. So we're seeing a horizontal escalation that goes beyond what we saw in the previous round of this war. And some of the nightmare scenarios that were avoided, such as the Houthis coming in and closing the straits there, Bab el-Mandeb, is now, at least they've hinted at it very clearly. They've shot at ships, and I think there's a recognition that they have a capability, at least for a period of time, of doing so, which is a very, very dangerous situation. And then you also have a potential, and I wrote about this on Substack and our Responsible Statecraft, that you may also have the Ukrainians trying to open up a northern frontier, because they struck an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea, showcasing their ability to use long-range drones, because that was a long-range drone that struck that. And I think it took the Iranians by surprise as well. And in the worst scenario, in my view, it's not just them showcasing what they can do. It's not just them, hinting to the U.S. what it can help the U.S. with, if the U.S. is more helpful to Ukraine in Russia, against Russia, or that they're just trying to extract the cost on the Iranians for the support Iran has provided Russia. But rather that this may actually be something bigger, which is to merge the two battlefields, to make the two wars one, and by that push the U.S. into something even Biden resisted, which was to get into a direct confrontation with Russia.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's unbelievably stupid, and I think that it's a very risky maneuver, especially considering, and I want to hear your take on this, any extension of the Iranian conflict actually plays against Ukraine's immediate interests of self-defense. Zelensky has asked for 300 PAC-3 missiles earlier today, when it's very clear that we're, panic shipping. We've deferred a lot of these Patriot systems that were supposed to be shipped to other allies. We've deferred those transfers specifically so we can hurry them to the Gulf region. And even then, we're depleting those munitions. So there's no PAC-3s that are coming to Ukraine in this situation, which makes it a lot easier for Vladimir Putin to, especially as temperatures get colder, to strike with ease at a lot of these energy facilities and leave Ukraine and the civilian population of Ukraine without heat in the cold winter. So I don't understand why. I mean, I understand why he's doing it. It seems like he's trying to merge the conflict, as you said, and to make himself seem more valuable to Trump. And unfortunately, because Trump is stupid, he has to do stupid things to make himself seem more valuable to Trump as an asset against Iran. Do you see that theater expanding as well on the Ukrainian front, or do you think that this was, a first strike and that they're going to go back to diplomacy somehow with Iran?
So we've seen some diplomatic activity between Iran and the Ukrainians, which appear to have occurred immediately after Zelensky's meeting.
Yeah.
with Trump at the White House, in which the Ukrainian foreign minister essentially called up the Iranian foreign minister, appeared to have done some sort of an apology or acknowledgement of error, which then was accepted by the Iranians. And this appears to have been a diffusion of the situation. That in and of itself does not mean that the Ukrainians may have completely given up on this idea. It's just that, they show cases, they're lowering temperature and maybe go up again at some point. Your argument is a very interesting one because I think it really reflects the risk. If the Ukrainians expand this, but don't get massive American support and involvement in its war against Russia, then this is absolutely a losing proposition. So it's a huge gamble, because then they're just overextending themselves at a point on which they can't afford to without getting the kind of return on investment that they're looking for. So it is a huge gamble. I can understand why the Ukrainians think that it's a gamble that potentially is worthwhile, because for the first time in a long time, I think Ukraine came to Washington not necessarily as someone asking for charity, but someone who was offering help. And that Trump may have been susceptible to that offer precisely because he's in such a self-inflicted predicament with Iran in which he has no good military options and doesn't seem to have the patience for the good diplomatic options. Again, I'm not saying that this will happen. Some people are telling me it's inevitable. I'm not saying that it's a valid direction to go down. On the contrary, I would think it's very stupid. But I'm trying to see it from the perspective of those who would argue in favor of what is the logic that they're trying to see. And I think there is one. I'll add one other logic from the Israeli standpoint as to why I think they would be quite favorable towards this. One, it would prolong the Iran war, which is the Israeli interest, and they made that very clear. Two, the Europeans are involved in Ukraine, but they're not directly involved in the Iran war in the same way. This would bring them into that arena as well. And third, and perhaps most importantly, if these two wars merge, then you have a scenario in which you can reframe this conflict altogether. And then defeating Iran does not become something you do to defend Israel. It's something you do to defend Ukraine. And in the US in particular, mindful of how Israel has plummeted, its standing has plummeted in Washington. And the degree to which Democrats are opposed to the Iran war, but they're still very supportive of the idea of supporting Ukraine, it can shake things up in a bit that the Israelis may think is a bit unpredictable, but it could not possibly be worse than the situation the Israelis are facing right now.
Do you feel like that's connected with the likes of Laura Loomer, a Hasbarist, an ultra-Zionist, going to Ukraine, flying out to Ukraine and having a change of heart as she interviews Zelensky? I read that as a deliberate effort to merge both of these conflicts exactly in the same way that you're mentioning, in an effort to basically also improve the Israeli position by latching on to a much more bipartisan war, which is the continuation of the Ukrainian conflict, the Ukrainian defenses, especially at a time when Zelensky has also gained more leverage over Russia with its successive strikes on critical oil and energy infrastructure, partially with additional NATO involvement. That's how I read it. Do you feel the same way? And also, what do you feel about the mainstream laundering of the reputation of someone as unstable and as insane as Laura Loomer?
Let me start off with the first question. It certainly looks plausible because it was quite fascinating. I don't claim to understand how Loomer thinks and how she operates. She apparently thinks that she knows that about me. I can assure you that she doesn't. But it doesn't. It certainly does.
We should be careful. She's tried to get us both deported. So
exactly. It certainly does appear that it would fit that logic. But again, I don't know the details of it, and I don't know exactly what is motivating her. But it is something that a lot of people have taken note of, that this sudden effort to, treat the two wars as if they're the same, as if, this rhetoric that we're fighting the same enemy, that is a very typical effort to try to expand the war in order to make it more winnable, particularly when you're stuck. I mean, it's no different from other problems. When faced with a problem, sometimes you have to make it bigger to resolve it. In this specific case, I don't think it does. I think it actually brings us closer to essentially a world war. it would end up being a scenario in which this war would take place on 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa, because of the Red Sea. I think that would be an absolute disaster. But that does not mean that others do. They may see it as an opportunity.
Yeah. So there was one other question I wanted to ask you about the Iraqi strike capabilities, because obviously the Ansar Allah movement allegedly has also struck the Yanbu port, which is obviously playing a pivotal role since the Strait of Hormuz has been closed. They've demonstrated that they have the willingness and capabilities of also striking Saudi Aramco facilities. This hasn't actually translated to the oil markets at all. Like the crude prices have not, the crude prices continue going down for some weird reason, even though the refinery is very clearly on fire. So I wanted to ask you, like, what's going on with the markets by your estimation? And two, the Iraqi militias potentially striking a ship directly in the Red Sea, nearing the Suez Canal. What does that say about a potential oil and energy crisis in Europe, which is still, getting a lot of its needs met through the Suez Canal?
Yeah. So look, we remember 2019, the Saudi Aramco fields were struck. The Saudis, of course, point the finger to Iran. It does seem to be quite likely that actually there were Iranian drones. The Iranians were behind it, but it was shot by Iraqi militias in Iraq that were coming from the northwest. That capability is clearly there, and I think this is one of those options that if there is this type of a total war or full-scale war that Trump is toying with, his idea that it will be the thing that will work, reality is that the Iranians and their allies have counter-escalatory steps and measures at their disposal that would put the US and the entire global economy under tremendous amount of strain, far beyond what we have seen so far. And I have to say, when he comes to the oil market, I am stunned. I am shocked. Already back in the first round of this war, the prices were artificially low. And of course, we know that a lot of that was because of the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It was because of oral interventions into the market that Trump kept on doing, playing with their expectations. But
China
now
also cutting down their imports by half almost. Yeah.
Certainly, exactly. So there were a lot of different factors. How sustainable that is a different story. But my impression talking to folks there is that a lot of the folks in the market are just really relying on a degree of rationality, which I understand. I have to do the same thing when I do my analysis, but sometimes we just have to understand that rationality is not necessarily what is driving this. But they're just thinking there's no way you can continue doing this. And as a result, they have the expectation that oil is going to come down. And as a result, they're not panicking or actually even reacting to some of these things. And I think it may be a miscalculation, because I think we're closer to that type of an escalation than the market seems to think we are.
As far as going back to Ukraine, my assessment is that Ukraine actually gained tremendous leverage with the successive strikes on critical oil and gas infrastructure deep inside of Russian territory. They were able to successfully strike tankers as well, Russian oil shipments as well. Do you feel as though this also creates additional pressure on the volatility of the energy markets, which then, ironically enough, would make it harder for Trump to continue waging war against Iran? Because it feels like there's a direct contradiction with the things that Ukraine is doing that is allowing them to gain tremendous leverage over Russia. I think this is the highest point that Ukraine has been at since, and the battle lines have not shifted, obviously. But I'm saying, like, as far as universalizing the cost for the Russian population, making them more angry, long lines at gas stations, Russia cutting diesel exports out of the country. All of this is, on the one hand, giving less of a timeline for Donald Trump in Iran, but also giving Ukraine a lot of additional leverage. I have maintained the position that this would be a perfect opportunity to try to pressure Vladimir Putin into a real long-standing ceasefire, and not one that Vladimir Putin was dangling over Ukraine leading up to the Anchorage summit, which was very clearly Russia trying to sever ties between the United States and Ukraine, and even successfully getting to sever some ties between Ukraine and the United States, only to continue the war and make maximalist demands. Do you feel like Ukraine could entertain a ceasefire at this point? And do you think that there's any appetite from Zelensky to entertain some kind of ceasefire at this point, given that they're also trying to expand the theater of conflict?
Yeah, so I know too little about the war. I haven't been able to follow that at all for the last 6 or so months because of this other war, to be able to give you a more informed opinion on that. But I can tell you that the messaging that I seem to be picking up here in Washington with Zelensky's visit, it certainly is not one of going back to the negotiating table and finding a ceasefire. It is to take advantage of the current position that Ukrainians have to really push for far more American support and a stronger commitment to the US, to Ukraine. And Trump has really changed his tune on Ukraine in a rather dramatic way just in the last couple of weeks. And whether that actually is also connected to hints or suspicions of what the Ukrainians can do for Trump in Iran is unclear at this point, but that may very well be part of the puzzle.
Okay. Well, Trita Parsi, thank you so much for coming on. You have
Thank
any
you.
parting thoughts, some final words, and also where can people find you?
They can find me at the Quincy Institute, which is quincyinst.org, on Substack, which is tritaparsi.substack.com, and at Twitter at tparsi.
All right. Thank you, Trita, for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Always
Really
a wonderful
appreciate that.
experience. Have a good one.
Likewise. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye. All right. That was Trita Parsi of the Quincy Institute, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute. Amazing guest as always. An endless well of knowledge on all things Iran. We are now going to get back to we're moving on from situation monitoring, at least for the time being. Decent interview would have been better if both of you were in tank tops. True. I'll hit him up next time. I'll be like, hey, can you show off that muscular physique for my audience? Y'all are insane. Here, this is what you deserve. I liked that the Trita Parsi interview was sandwiched between Lindsey Graham, Coochie Maxing, and ended with Benihana Coochie Maxing. I looked. This one is not as good because it doesn't show the dogs. Cooter mogging, you uncultured buffoon. Why are you like this? I'm just showing you how these people operate. Oh, there it is.
Damn, this guy's good.